law. There's some questions about that. But how do you think about that piece of it? Because literally the debate on X right now among, I think, a lot of your friends is about what this all means.
Well, I like to think about the first principles, which is why do people choose the model for the task at hand? And I think there's really two topics that I think every time I talk to probably 100 CEOs every single month, so I'm pretty plugged into top of mind. And there's two things, which is AI tokenomics, which is how can I know that I'm getting the value from this spend on tokens? And then I'll use the word sovereignty, which is just making sure, like, what is my competitive moat in the age of AI as well? And I'll say one thing that I think is a little bit overblown about these open weight models is they're not necessarily cheaper to run. Whether or not they're cheaper to train, you don't care.
Because you're using just as many tokens. In fact, they may be less efficient.
Yeah, there's this thing called token efficiency, and it turns out the frontier models are much, much more token efficient. And beyond that,
by the way, just for the audience, because there's some people who are watching and they'd be like, token what? Why do we call effectively energy expenditure token? Is that a fair description of what's happening here?
I'll give an overly simplistic view, and then I'll tell you why it's wrong. You know, you can think of a token. A token is to intelligence like a watt is to electricity, like a unit of intelligence. And token efficient means how many tokens does it take to complete a task?
And to answer the question you've asked.
Answer the question. But they're not every token is actually equal. And you know, if you've used a really advanced model like 5.6 from OpenAI, you'll know actually, wow, the coded writes is a lot better than the previous model. So it's not exactly the right analogy. And that's the thing is actually, I think what we're seeing is for a lot of tasks, it turns out these frontier models from OpenAI and Anthropic are actually just better than these open weight models. And I think it's important for the lab.
Blah, 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 blah. Look at it from this perspective. Does OpenAI make any money? Profit? No. Why? Money coming in from their customers is less than the money going out to actually run the query and build these frontier models and maintain them. Secondly, if OpenAI eventually stops their funding, getting funds from VCs, or maybe a bailout for the government through some sort of sovereign wealth fund, how are they going to pay the server companies? The server companies are going to shut them down. And eventually there's going to be a problem. Okay, so it's not a profitable business. Now let's look at the people that actually use these models, that use these tokens, these companies that are building these agents, and they're starting to realize this is not profitable for us. It costs us too much to do, and there's not enough return on investment. How is OpenAI going to make any money? How? And there's probably, in about 12 months, there's going to be a lot of companies that say, you know what? We're going into a recession. We're going to cut our CapEx. We're not going to allow our more build out of these AI agents. I'm not saying artificial intelligence is completely bad. I think it's very useful in defense. I think it's very useful in scientific discovery, understanding the cosmos, understanding biology, helping with folding proteins and finding new solutions to diseases. Yeah, but the average person isn't going to need that. And why is it that OpenAI is coming out today? Oh, they're getting a little bit of stress from the Chinese saying that they can make a more efficient model. And you may not need as many chips. And you may not need as much infrastructure. And oh, by the way, maybe an open source model is better than a proprietary model. So Anthropic and OpenAI have to create a manufactured consensus to believe their business model is sustainable. But yet, all you got to do is pencil to paper and just use some basic logic. Is this sustainable? And the answer is no. No matter what word they use, token economics or whatever, it doesn't make sense. just like this MicroStrategy that ended up renaming his Michael Sayer. He ended up renaming his company to Strategy. And he had this concept that he's going to buy Bitcoin. People are going to pay for his stock, and that paid a multiple relative to Bitcoin. What? Wait a minute. Bitcoin is X amount of dollars. Right now, Bitcoin is trading at 64,555. Why would someone pay a multiple for his stock? Why don't you just own Bitcoin? The logic doesn't make sense. And that's the reason why strategies having problems. People bought in a bullshit lie. Pen to paper. You don't need Excel. You don't need Google Docs. Pen to paper. Simple logic.
United States, if you just think about what you want from a model, you might want it to be fast for some tasks. Let's say you're looking at every credit card transaction. You might want it to be really cheap because this task isn't a frontier task to do. You might actually want the highest level of intelligence. If you're
all right. So make sure that the banking industry is doing it really quick, checking fraud, transaction quickness. Okay, great. Does that justify $1 trillion build out? Pen to paper, logic, pen to paper. How can you justify over $1 trillion build out of AI? How are you going to make the money back? How? The average business that runs the economy in the United States doesn't need AI. It's small businesses that run most of the United States, not IBM, not Oracle, not Microsoft, not Apple, not ExxonMobil. The average little mom and pop shop, all the way up to 100 to 250 employees. That's the bulk of the economy. And most of those companies don't need AI. They would do just fine without it. So can you really justify $1 trillion company so you can process credit cards faster? That's what he's saying. So the banks are going to pay for the infrastructure? They're going to be willing to pay these high price tokens? No.
Actuary work, you want it to be great. I think the U.S. labs need, for every price, performance, latency, cost, they need to have the best model available. And actually, I think that's more likely than not, just because it turns out that just having open weights isn't actually the main thing driving many of those costs. And
now think about this. Now think about it. OpenAI doesn't make any money. Money in, money out. Now, if the tokens are going to get cheaper, then the actual money that's coming in per token to OpenAI is going to go down. And the current infrastructure that's built out has a certain energy consumption. Now, maybe through software, then the chips that are built for these server farms, they're more efficient. So the cost to OpenAI will go down. But the tokens price would have to go down too to get enough customers to buy in using these on a regular basis. It's not a sustainable model. Which one's moving faster? The cost going down to run it, or the cost of the token price going down? Which one is it? So wait a minute. So price for this to go down. So what are you saying? Things are going to get more efficient. Okay, fine, great. More efficient, but the tokenization is going to have to go down. Is there really a demand to be able to support the revenue stream that you need to justify the $1 trillion build out? No, the revenues are going to go down lower. You're not going to get mass adoption. The revenues are going to go down lower because customers are going to say, well, it's more efficient, so it should cost less. Why is it costing more? And if they keep on raising prices to try to pay for the infrastructure, then it seems to me that customers are going to say, you know what, we're going to rationalize our tokens, we're going to detokenize, we're going to do it in-house, whatever. I realize that doing this big AI agent build out is stupid. Something doesn't make sense with the business model. Something doesn't make sense with the business model. They create a model that maybe is more efficient, and they don't have to use as many tokens for the customer. But how are they going to be able to justify higher prices? Customers are going to push back. And the servers, they have somewhat of a fixed cost over a 3-year period because of the chips being sold to them. They have a contract. They're locked in. So NVIDIA is going to start seeing, well, wait a minute. They're producing a chip that's faster and more efficient, but they're going to try to charge the same, slightly more or slightly less than what it is currently. And they build out the second generation of farms. It's still going to be costly. So this tokenomics that he's talking about, you're going to use less tokens. Have we built out too much? Will these server farms make money? If not, they'll close shop. There's a lot of problems with this. A lot of problems. How will OpenAI and Anthropic actually make money? If you're an investor and you're not early investor, I'm not talking about VC. I'm talking about if they went IPO and you invested and you're a shareholder and they start publishing to the public what their financial statements are, and they're always in the hole, always in the hole, always in the hole. How will you get capital appreciation of your stock and get a potential dividend? You won't. You won't. Now, the ones that bought into this crazy scheme at the very beginning, if they can go IPO and then exit out, they'll make a lot of money. But the average investor is not going to make a lot of money once they go IPO. Where is the beef?
Compute efficiency is something that I think the frontier labs are.
But let's also bring the audience that may not be on board with us into the other piece of the conversation about open weight models, in particular this, they're calling it Kimi or K3. This is a model out of China that some people believe is as good as, if not better than, OpenAI's 5.6 or Fable from Anthropic in terms of what it can produce. Maybe less efficient, but at the same time, ostensibly should be cheaper. And the other question is, how do you think they created the model? Some people think the model was...
And then there's so many models that you're diffusing the actual demand. If there was only one company, they have maybe a chance through a monopoly. But because there's multiple companies in this whole frontier world, there's no way that OpenAI or Anthropic will be able to afford the build out that they're doing. Where's the demand for the customers? Where is it? How are you going to justify? So you got a limited pool of demand of customers, and the only way to become profitable is to try to cut costs with the compute and to raise prices for the tokens. Now, there's going to be a pushback from your customers. And these people that are trying to get lower cost for the servers, they don't have too much. OpenAI and Anthropic don't have purchasing power. It's NVIDIA that has the selling power. They have the command of making the chip and dictating the price. I don't know. I think it's going to crash.
Dolan, other people think they actually built it themselves. What do you think?
You know, this is my point, which is, you know, is it cheaper to use is the most important part for anyone considering it. And I don't think that, I think the jury's out on that.
Right. Cheaper to use for you and I, yes.
Yeah.
But there's also a question of how much it costs them to build it. And the reason why that matters is because a lot of the big frontier model makers in the US are spending extraordinary amounts of money to build massive data centers, in part for us to use the models, but in part for you to build the models. And if you can build the models for a lot less, that's a different game too.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's going
electricity is the biggest energy theme in the 21st century.
We really are entering a new age.
You need to balance supply and demand.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's going to be, you know, how efficient is your inference? And I think the frontier labs are still far ahead here, and I think that's really where the value is going to accrue, because at the end of the day, you know, as you
inference being every time I put in a prompt, I get an answer.
That's right. It's essentially how efficient it is to use these models.
So you spend all this money to build out the infrastructure. The hyperscalers are doing that. You spend the AI companies are spending all this money to build the frontier model and to maintain it. Okay, so you have all that cost on your balance sheet. You have that research and development cost, and you have that assets that you purchased, depending on what kind of company you are. But the thing is, you have these costs that you've invested in this, and then now let's look at the variable usage. So you have a query that's going to be doing this inference that may be cheaper to run now. Okay, so how are you going to have OpenAI justify a higher revenue stream? And the only hope that they have is that more people will be, there's going to be a manufactured consensus in the media to get the people to believe that they absolutely need to use AI all the time for their work tasks. And by having cheaper tokens, your usage would go up, and therefore revenue would go up for them. But what happens when companies start to realize, well, wait a minute, you're not in control of your IP, and you really don't get a strong ROI from all doing all this? It's a waste. Or marginally better. People are going to pull back. So where's the demand? Where's the demand? Even if the chips and the inference costs, like he's saying, the inference costs are going to go down. Okay, so they built out this infrastructure. They're going to try to depreciate it out 10 years or 5 years or whatever. But the problem is that the chips, they can only last 18 months. 10% of the chips in a server farm blow up because of heat within 18 months. 10%. The chips don't last more than 3 years because of the usage. So you have to build it out again. Okay, so instead of building out $1 trillion, maybe it's only $500 billion. But still, it's a burden. Now it's $1.5 trillion that you have to try to make up. Because you didn't make up your revenue for the first 3 years. And it's just digging a hole more and more and more, and eventually this will collapse.
Particular price point. I think this is an area where the frontier labs still have a significant advantage, and you're seeing that from everyday use. I mean, the people, not everyone's used all these models yet, so I don't want to overstate confidence here, but if you're using things like Fable 5.6, K3, 5.6 is still actually, just if you think about what does it take to write this computer program with AI, 5.6 is leading by most of these metrics, and I think that's what's most important.
The other piece of this conversation is we had the CEO Ramp in here just last week. He actually built a system so you can actually see how much money you're spending at any given moment and whether you're using the right models. Meaning sometimes people are asking the highest end model, you know, what the weather is, which is
like driving a Ferrari to the grocery store,
which is like a terrible efficiency situation. And we've had other people. Darek Khosrowshahi was on the broadcast earlier this week. He's argued that he's not seeing the ROI, the return on investment from all of this. We had Alex Karp, that famous viral video where he says nobody's getting their money's worth for all of this. And how do you think about that piece of it?
Well, bring it to my day job, Sarah, because I actually think the market's in kind of a quirky spot where everyone's worrying about paying for tokens. And it would be like if you signed up for Gmail and you paid for CPU cycle or something. I believe where the world is going is paying for outcomes. So at Sarah, we make AI agents that help companies drive revenue and drive customer service. But our customers don't pay for tokens.
Right. This is Sierra. Why don't you explain what Sierra does for those who don't know?
Yeah, so at Sierra, we help power things like if you call DirecTV or SiriusXM on the phone, you'll talk to an AI agent now rather than a person. You don't need to wait on hold. We just launched a new product called Horizon, which are long horizon agents that help people originate loans or do pre-authorization for medical procedures and truly drive revenue.
Oh, so it's really just chatbots. So we built out a $1 trillion industry, and the best use case that we can come up with is chatbots to scheduling an appointment. See the point that I'm making here? They're trying to make you think you need to outsource your corporate thinking, your corporate tasks, to some agent that's going to do it for you. Now, let's just say that's all hunky-dory and it's profitable for everybody, which it's not. But let's just say it was in a utopic world. If you keep on automating everything and decouple labor and capital, who pays the bills? Eventually, the system crashes. The reason why we have a great country that we have in the United States is because of labor and capital. Labor and capital. When you decouple that, you no longer have a strong economy and you will no longer have a strong government. It's that simple.
There's two things. One is you don't pay for tokens, you pay for outcomes. You pay for originated loan or pre-authorization. And number two is we help you develop a competitive moat in AI because we essentially help you compound the data about your customers. So no matter as frontier intelligence improves, you're actually developing this compounding asset, which is the data you know about your customers and your relationships with your customers. And our thinking is it really addresses these.
So let me get this straight. There are softwares as simple as Excel, where you can collect data, maybe even put it in Access, but just collect data, have customer information. You have a CRM, customer relationship management software, maybe that you purchased. You have all this customer data, and you use things like graphs, and you use things like pie charts, and you use things like statistical analysis, and do it all in Excel. And you can have an employee update those charts, those dashboards, maybe even download from a CRM and have it as a raw file that loads up the dashboard directly. You don't need any of this AI stuff. None of it. None of it. And you actually have the time to think about what is really going on with these customers. Now, if you want to get a little bit fancy, you can go use Copilot and say, with this chart, could you summarize some key findings? But if you have an employee that needs Copilot to give you the summary of the chart of what the key findings are, maybe you need a new employee because they should be able to read a chart right away and tell you what's going on. Or if you want to get even fancier, maybe you use MATLAB or R or Python to create some statistical analysis, some data analytics. This is really a data analytics issue. Now, let's think about what's going on with Palantir. Palantir is tied to the government. It's doing well relative to with their revenue stream. Yes, they have insider information and insiders within the government that help them get contracts. But it's an analytical company using a tool like machine learning or what we call AI. But machine learning and AI tools have been around, especially neural networks, for over 10 years in MATLAB or in R or in Python. So we're getting sold a bill of goods, but we don't really need it. What you really need is a data scientist or a data analytics individual in your company. You don't need all this. Create the agents, send it out, trying to understand your customers. Really? Stupid. I'll tell you, these CEOs that are running these Fortune 500 companies, dipshits to the 10th degree.
I would just sovereignty and
Okay,
tokenomics.
let me ask you a question about your own tokenomics then.
Yeah.
So for every time that you're having to process one of these phone calls, I imagine you on your end are having to use an extraordinary amount of tokens. So does the math for you, meaning when you have a successful outcome for your client, your customer, and they pay you per success, are they paying you more? I'm hoping you're going to say yes. I'm hoping that they're paying you more than what it cost you to actually produce, but I'm not sure.
Yes, they are.
Okay.
And I would argue it's easier for us as a applied AI company to essentially amortize the R&D costs of developing specialized models for low latency voice conversation than it is for every company in the world to do that individually. And I think the solution to a lot of the problems with AI tokenomics is we don't have a mature applied AI market. So rather than every company licensing tokens and building things from component parts, if we have more companies like Sierra providing these solutions out of the box that can pick up the phone for your toll-free number and you pay for those outcomes, we can bear the burden of managing tokens.
Biggest energy theme in the 21st century.
Brighteon entering a new age.
All it is that you're outsourcing your part of your operation, quote, customer service, to another company. And that inside that company is doing a black box. And you're paying per month for that service. So what it is just outsourcing what you should be doing in-house anyways. Stupid. Doesn't make any sense. Hello, my name is Dr. Paul Cottrell. We are live streaming on Rumble, on YouTube, also on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Thank you for joining. These videos are for free. I give you my opinion on what's going on. I tell you how I'm seeing the markets and how you could benefit from them and breaking news, and also how to improve your health. A lot of people don't understand that some simple concepts can actually save your life. Some simple concepts can actually make you wealthy. And just listen to the noise, listen to that signal within that noise, and try to benefit from it instead of being taken advantage of. Many people were taken advantage of during the Lehman crisis. Many people were taken advantage during the bubble crisis, the bubble burst for tech bubble. Many people were taken advantage of during other recessionary times in the United States. But you don't have to be. You don't have to be a victim. You can say you are going to take charge of your health and wealth and not be a victim and not buy into the manufactured consensus. That's what all this news is. This is just manufactured consensus. But there's a signal, a reason why to listen to the Fox News and the CNNs and the Al Jazeeras and CNBC and the Bloombergs and all this stuff, is there's a signal. And if you know what to pick up, you can make money. But the average person, they just go, well, I'm just listening to CNN and just, passively, and then if you just listen to CNN, you must believe everything they're saying. No, there's a signal that's going on. People make big money because they understand where the money's going to flow before it starts. These conferences like CFR or Davos or the World Economic Forum or Chatham House, those are where the players are. And when they leave those Chatham Houses and Davos and they start doing things being interviewed, doing conferences, saying things, doing press release, those are signals of what was in the room months ago that you're not a part of. You can catch the signal. So instead of saying, oh, these people at Davos, you know, they're running the world, blah, blah, blah. No, don't be stupid. Follow the trend of these people that are moving around the money, around the world. Listen to the signal. And when you do that, it's as if you were in the room at Chatham House. It's as if you were in the room at Davos. Do you understand now why this show is so important to listen to? But, of course, there's stupid people out there that will continue to be stupid. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Help support the work that I do. All these videos are for free. Share the links. Ask your social media to follow me. Now, I have great supplements that will help to slow down the aging process. These are supplements that I take every day, and the proof's in the pudding, all right? It works. It does slow down the aging process. All right, now, what can you do to help build muscle? If you're 40 years of age, male or female, you're atrophying. And as you get older, you start to methylate genes, and your gene expression for muscle building is declining. That gene expression declines because of the methylation. Myotrol helps to improve gene expression to build muscle. Do a little bit of resistance training, take the Myotrol, and this will help to build that muscle and maintain muscle. And it also helps the health of the mitochondria, so you have the ATP, the energy, to keep the muscle. Now, by building muscle, you're also helping brain function. Dr. Paul Cottrell, how can that be? If you're doing bicep curls and you're doing pull-ups, how is that going to help your brain? By increasing musculature, you're increasing myokines. If you're increasing myokines in BDNF, which is another important compound, you're protecting your neurons. And that all happens when you build muscle. If you help build up your calves, you're also helping venous return flow. So you're helping your cardiovascular system. And if you're building back muscles, your posture's better. Your bone density's better. So by building muscle, you get a lot of other benefits. That's your bone, by doing that resistance training, protecting your neurons, getting better venous return flow, and better lymphatic flow. So it's helping your immune system too. Now, what I just said could save someone's life. How, Dr. Paul Cottrell? By just taking Myotrol, it could save someone's life. By doing resistance training and building muscle and improving your cardiovascular health and helping with your brain and building denser bone. When you get into your geriatric years and you fall, you don't break your hip and die in 2 weeks. The point here that I'm making is that not paying attention to certain things with your health could lead to a chaotic event later that leads to death. If you mitigate some of those chaotic events, if you slowly improve your lifestyle and supplementation, you can get healthy and slow down the methylation process and be 10, 15, 20 years younger biologically. It can happen. There's lots of people that are falling into this category now because they understand what they need to do. Now, everybody's body is slightly different. Everybody's biochemistry is slightly different. But if you take these principles, you will be able to slow down aging. I don't care how healthy you are or how unhealthy you are. You will benefit from this. Just listen. So take the Myotrol, do resistance training, build muscle, and you get a lot of other benefits. Now, another great way to improve brain function is getting proper sleep. Getting proper sleep is going to slow down the aging process. Now, taking Goodnight formula will help you with that. This has GABA and passion flower, tryptophan and melatonin, and it'll get you into 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep. So you're consolidating memory, detoxifying your central nervous system, and you'll be well rested. When you do that regularly, you're literally improving your brain function. You do that regularly, you're slowing down the aging process. Please go to my store and get the Goodnight formula. The link is in the description of this video. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com. Now, the markets are open. The S&P 500 is trading at 7,473. VIX is trading at 18. The currency markets are stable. Euro's at 114. Japanese yen is trading at 162.52. The Japanese yen seems a little weak. You know, fair value may be at 135. Probably what's happening is there's a carry trade going on where they're selling yen, buying dollars, getting into the U.S. market. But when the market starts to falter and people want to get out, they're going to have to repatriate their money back into the yen. And that's the reason why I say that when we start seeing the yen start to appreciate, when we start seeing 135, 140, that's probably a good signal that bad things are coming for equity market. Oil is trading at 81.63. Natural gas is trading at 2.865, and Bitcoin is at 64,250. Right now, the semiconductor ETF is trading at 1336 for people that are just joining. I am watching very carefully to short the semiconductor industry because I believe that there's too much of a build out and the semiconductors are going to suffer and the tech sector is going to suffer. So there's lots of ways to short it, but I'm looking specifically to the semiconductor industry and planning on shorting it. So with that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right, let's take a look at some of the Ayatollah issues warning as U.S. obliterates Iranian assets.
Have you ever seen a product that transforms any ordinary space into a dreamy underwater world in just 1 second? Meet the Kamau Immersive Ocean Projector, the mood light that's taking the market.
Thank you, gentlemen, and good morning. Escalating attacks in the Middle East, the U.S. conducting a 9th straight night of strikes against Iran, and the regime targeting American allies in the Gulf in return. So good morning, everybody, on this World Cup Monday. We'll call it. Live in New York.
It's not a holiday. It's not a holiday. Not at all. But it was a great run, and we'll have more on that in a bit. I'm Dana Perino, and this is America's Newsroom. So on the news, CENTCOM says American forces are expanding its scope of the strikes, taking out Iranian military assets all across the country. And it's all part of President Trump's increasing pressure campaign. It's turning up the heat on Iran over its aggressive actions in the Strait of Hormuz.
So all of this coming amid a tragic reminder about the cost of bravery. Iranian missile strikes at an airbase in Jordan, killing 2 U.S. service members on Friday, a 3rd member reportedly still missing. Also yesterday on Sunday, a 4th soldier killed in northern Iraq. The commander-in-chief paying tribute to their ultimate sacrifice for America.
Well, we feel very badly, but you know, those great people, those great patriots who are out there fighting that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Iran has been very, very badly damaged. They've lost everything almost militarily. They've got very little effort.
General Jack Keane is standing by, but let's start with Trey Yinks. He's live in Tel Aviv. Good morning, Trey.
Dana, good morning. A 9th consecutive night of U.S. strikes hit Iran overnight. According to CENTCOM military command centers, a variety of surveillance positions, missile and drone launching sites.
Because there is starting to be a sell-off in the S&P 500, I did put my short position shorting semiconductors. I just did it. See what happens.
Along with other targets were hit. The strikes do come after 3 U.S. service members were killed by an Iranian ballistic missile attack in Jordan on Friday. The U.S. military is still working to identify the remains of that 3rd soldier. A horse soldier was killed in northern Iraq during a controlled detonation of an unexploded Iranian drone. President Trump reacted to the Iranian attacks, the U.S. strikes, and the deaths of these soldiers on Sunday.
They've got some missiles, they've got some drones, they've got some manufacturing ability, not much. We control the Strait, they don't control anything. So we'll see what happens, but we hit them very hard again tonight. And we did that in honor of the probably three.
President Trump told Fox News last week that if Iran doesn't reach a deal, strikes will escalate this week to hit power plants and bridges. Iranian officials have indicated that some new proposals are being discussed.
Proposals have been put forward by mediators. They've been conveyed to us and we have received them. But for now, allow me not to go into details. What can I confirm? That in recent days, the diplomatic apparatus has remained active and that ideas have indeed been conveyed to us by several mediators.
The Iranians are saying publicly the memorandum of understanding is suspended. Regional countries are reportedly pushing for another agreement, as Secretary of State Marco Rubio indicated the diplomatic path forward remains open.
I think we're always open to diplomacy. It has to be real. It has to be a deal that they're willing to live by. Look, Iran a week ago was supposed to put out a statement saying that the Straits of Hormuz would be open, that they would no longer attack shipping. And instead of doing that, they attacked 3 ships. I think that was last Friday or Saturday. So, I mean, their behavior has to change in order for ours to change.
Dana, as we are speaking, there are reports of sirens sounding right now in Bahrain. Here in Israel, the military remains on high alert. Just yesterday, Israeli missile interceptors were fired at Iranian missile debris as Iranian missiles targeted the southern Jordanian city of Aqaba. Dana?
All right, Trey in Tel Aviv. Thank you. Bill?
So now, Dana, this is some of the video that CENTCOM put out on Sunday, some of the hits that were recorded on the ground there in Iran. Come over here on the map and we'll show you where most of the activity has been from over the weekend. Strait of Hormuz, that choke point, yet again, is the focus point. As you can see, the number of reported and confirmed hits here right on the Iranian side of the Persian Gulf, right here in the Gulf of Oman. A few other hits right here across the border from Kuwait and Iraq. And one other interesting point here, in the town of Tabriz, this is about 325 miles northwest of Tehran, there were underground missile sites that were apparently targeted by the U.S. We'll wait to see how successful those might have been. In return now, the Iranians struck back as well. Keep in mind, all the yellow dots on that map behind me, these are all U.S. military bases throughout the region, from Jordan up here into northern Iraq, many around the area of Kuwait, Bahrain, and into the UAE. What we're hearing from Kuwait and Bahrain is that missiles were incoming. We believe none of those missiles made much of a contact. What Trey just mentioned, Aqaba down here is in southern Jordan. That was a place where a known hit took place over the weekend. With regard to the blockade, it's still in place now, runs roughly from this point in Oman up to the border between Iran and Pakistan. What the military is telling us that there were 6 vessels redirected as of Sunday, and 1 other vessel was disabled. Why that happens, sometimes they don't pay attention to instructions or obey the commands, and therefore they are fired upon. We do believe, however, that dozens of ships, vessels carrying oil over the weekend and other ocean-going craft, some of them moved through the Iranian passage, some of them went through the international passage, so a bit of a mixture here again through the Strait of Hormuz. Jack Keen's with us now, Fox News senior strategic analyst. And sir, on a Monday, good to have you start our day with us. 9 straight nights, sir, is not insignificant. Do you see this conflict much different than it was a week ago?
Well, certainly, yes. Look, we're taking a restock of what's happened here. First of all, we went to a ceasefire on April the 7th after 39 days of military operations. And the reality was we went into a diplomatic phase that lasted almost 90 days. And out of that, we did get a signed document, the Memorandum of Understanding. And what was in there was one agreement, and then 60 days of negotiations to get to the tough future agreements. But that one agreement was the Straits of Hormuz. And the president of Iran and the president of the United States both signed the agreement. We have said many times on this broadcast, you can't trust the Iranians. They lie about what they intend to do. And even if they sign a deal, they likely will not comply with it. But the fact is, even what they did this time, 3 or 4 days after signing the deal, they violated the deal with their president's signature on it by disrupting the Straits of Hormuz, when what they were supposed to do is make an announcement that the Straits of Hormuz is open, there's no restrictions being imposed on it whatsoever, there's no tolls, there's no insurance fees, nothing. It's international waterways, and none of that took place. And obviously, we have been retaliating against that violation of that deal ever since. And what are we doing? We're doing what we couldn't get done diplomatically. We removed our blockade as part of the deal, but they maintain control. So now we're conducting the battle of the Straits of Hormuz to forcibly open the straits, secure it, and eventually control it. That is what has taken place, and huge progress is being made. And as we are taking casualties in doing this, casualties are part of war, and our heart goes out to the loss of life here. And 3 losses of life has taken place, 1 non-combatant and potentially a 4th. Add that to the list of thousands that the Iranians have killed Americans since 1983. And that's what we're dealing with in this barbaric regime. So this is going to still take some time to be able to achieve that objective the president has given to his military commanders. But that's the path we're on. What is the fuss all about with the Straits of Hormuz, Bill and Dana? From Iran's perspective, this is a strategic asset that exceeds the nuclear deal in terms of their enterprise. Why? Because their enterprise is largely under a mountain of rubble. But this is a means for them to have influence in the region and control the distribution of oil, something they have always wanted to have. And look, they're wanting to fight for it.
The Ayatollah put out this statement. Of course, he's not been seen since those initial attacks, but he said this, now that the American enemy seeks to ignite war and endure heavier costs, it should know that the Iranian nation and the resistance front have unforgettable lessons in store for it. Could you speak to, there's some anonymous reporting in the Washington Post today about our munitions and our capabilities, which of course I'm sure the Ayatollah in some way is figuring into his calculations?
Yes, I can't speak to the specifics of it because I don't know. It's not that I'm not revealing. But what I have been told is that in the time that, obviously there's 90 days we've been conducting a diplomatic effort, that we've come to full magazine depth again, and the Israelis are at full magazine depth as well. That is what I know. So I think we've got to ask the administration about it. I'm confident we can execute the mission the president has given us in front of us. And the reason why I say that is because we're fully prepared to go back to major combat operations, which would be 2 weeks with a different set of targets than what we're pursuing right now, along with the Israelis. And if we're prepared to do that, where the targets are considerably more exhausted than what we're dealing with the Straits of Hormuz, I think we're in good shape.
General, thanks for coming on. Jack Keane will check in again in a few days, perhaps midweek, and see where we are then.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Great talking to you.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox 1.
Have you seen Elon Musk's new patent? It predicts a new invention that could rewrite the future of wealth forever. I'm talking about a radical new form of AI that I call MAGI, and it stands for Manifested AGI, Artificial.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the olive leaf extract. This is a dual purpose supplement. This will help with your immune system and cardiovascular system. It brings down inflammation and helps you to control your lipid profile. By bringing down inflammation, you're helping your cardiovascular system. By individuals that have high inflammation, you cause these micro tears and eventually plaque buildup. So you want to mitigate that, you want to bring down that inflammation. But also by bringing down inflammation, you're helping the immune system, because high inflammation will lead to actually bringing down, if it's chronic, bringing down the efficacy of your immune system. So you want to keep inflammation down. When people do this, you age slower. Amazing. Now, olive leaf extract will also help to control that lipid profile. So it's going to help to bring down LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. When you do that, you're reducing the concentration of oxidized LDL, reducing plaque formation. So this is a great supplement to take every day. It's a dual purpose, so you're helping your immune system and cardiovascular system. Resveratrol helps with youthful gene expression, helps to get cells to go into apoptosis if they are senesced. It also helps your mitochondria produce more energy, so you have more ATP. It soaks up free radicals, and by soaking up those free radicals, you're helping the mitochondria. And resveratrol helps the basal layer of your skin. This is the reason why you look younger when you take resveratrol. It stacks really well with C60 to help that basal layer for your skin. So please go to my store and get this very high quality resveratrol. And lastly, digestive enzyme complex. Don't be a Steve Jobs. If you are 40 years of age or older, your pancreas doesn't work as well. I don't care how healthy you are. By taking digestive enzyme complex, you're going to be able to break up those proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids, be able to absorb your nutrients better, less load on your pancreas, so your pancreas can rest. And digestive enzyme complex also has bromelain. Bromelain helps to break up clots, super important for cardiovascular health. And the proteolytic enzymes in here help to break up glycoproteins. That's super important during the cold season. So it's dual purpose. Please go to my store, get digestive enzyme complex. Super important to improve your digestion and help to reduce the load on your pancreas. Don't be a Steve Jobs. Please go to my store, bell-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order.
Dharma has found 90% of those 400 or so Labour MPs gave Andy Burnham their nomination in the past 4 weeks of this election process. And so he should have pretty big amounts of authority. Again, I stress the should. The other big fly in the ointment here is as he starts to give these top jobs out, this is his moment of maximum political power in the next hours and days. As the top jobs go, there will be people who don't get the top job. There will be people who get sacked. They might not back him anymore. They might start to tell people like me, journalists, what they really think about Burnham, and that's when the power starts to ebb away.
Really, really well told. James Wilcock, UK politics reporter, joining us from London. He's our Bloomberg News reporter there. Fantastic to get his analysis here as Andy Burnham is now the new Prime Minister for the UK, promising a new economic model as he seeks to reassure Britons of his agenda. This is Bloomberg.
So basically, the new Prime Minister of England, of the UK, is going to roll back Thatcherism, and he's going to become more of a kinder, gentler communist. Amazing. Oh, wait a minute. Explosion outside the New York City immigration office just happened.
My meeting notes went from this to this after I started using granola. I'm in meetings all day and trying to take notes during calls And welcome back here on Live Now from Fox. The time is 10:21 on the East Coast and 7:21 on the West Coast. My name is Josh Breslow, and we continue to cover news, breaking news coming in out of New York City. You can see a live look over the skyline there on the right-hand side of your screen, but I want to pop this up from Bill Melugin over at Fox News as there were reports of an explosion outside of an immigration office, and Bill saying that he heard from the FBI reporting this statement saying, quote, "This morning, an individual deployed an incendiary device outside of 26 Federal Plaza
The individual has been taken into custody, and the FBI New York Joint Terrorism Task Force is investigating the incident, end quote. The New York City Police Department telling Fox News there was a, quote, found firearm in relation to this, but couldn't confirm if it was actually found on the suspect who was taken into custody. Now, we looked up at 26 Federal Plaza, and we can see that it's a building right there for the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, but also there are other locations there, including other federal buildings. So, again, that is 26 Federal Plaza. We're working with Bill Malutian, Fox News, as well as our Fox 5 New York team to gather much more information about all of this. And as you can see from that statement, there is very limited information. But here is what we know. The FBI saying a suspect was taken into custody after deploying an incendiary device outside of that federal building in New York City a short time ago. That statement in full says, quote, this morning, an individual deployed an incendiary device outside of 26 Federal Plaza. The individual has been taken into custody, and the FBI New York Joint Terrorism Task Force is investigating the incident, end quote. As we mentioned here, the New York Police Department said there was a, quote, found firearm that was tied to the incident, but it is not clear if that weapon was found on the suspect who was taken into custody. We also don't know at this point anything about that person. They are simply identified in the statement as a quote-unquote individual. We also know that video footage shows federal agents, including U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents, on the scene out there. As we get some potential live images and more details, we will keep you posted here on Live Now from Fox.
No.
Welcome back. We continue our look at AI, the intelligence revolution this morning. Dream Security, a sovereign AI and cyber defense company, recently announcing a $260 million funding round, bringing the total company valuation to $3 billion. This new financing will allow Dream to accelerate deployment of its sovereign AI and national cyber defense platforms across Europe, the Middle East,
So let's
Asia,
get this
and
straight.
the Americas.
We spent $1 trillion to build out AI, only to find out that we need to spend more money to secure our systems because of what we built out. See the lunacy?
Now is the co-founder of Dream Security. He is also former Austrian Chancellor Sebastian Kurz. Sebastian, great to see you this morning. Thanks so much for being here.
Great to see you, and thank you very much for the invitation.
Tell us about Dream and what you are trying to achieve here.
So we started 3.5 years ago with the idea that countries in the past were super nations if they had nuclear. And we thought that in the future, countries will be super nations if they control cyber, AI, and quantum. Quantum is still a bit early, but we try to help countries with support in AI and cyber, with our, first of all, cybersecurity solutions, AI-based, and second, sovereign AI solutions.
Yeah, I mean, we've been
Doesn't
talking.
this sound a little bit like, oh, don't worry about kinetic war, just focus on the info war? No, kinetic war is really important. Super important, because that's how you get things done. Well, no, it needs to be the info war. No, kinetic war. Now let's get this straight. He's more concerned about cybersecurity, but not really paying attention to nefarious actors building weapons of mass destruction that will harm people, especially in biologics. No, I think biologics are a lot more of a problem than cyber warfare. And that nation states with their cyber warfare is going to supplant nuclear power, supplant nuclear weaponry. Really?
We have this AI arms race with China, and it seems to be ramping up with Beijing's latest moonshot model, reportedly on par or or even outperforming platforms like OpenAI or Anthropic in some cases. Governments across the world are also racing to fend off more technologically advanced cyber attacks as we see AI get implemented. Sebastian, what are your thoughts there?
So first of all, I think that AI will bring a lot of positive things to the world. So I think we should be very optimistic because of AI. But of course, you're absolutely right. If it gets in the wrong hands, then it can also used in a very evil way. And cybersecurity is definitely one of the areas that will be very much affected. If you look at cyber attacks, for example, in the past, you needed a strong team, a lot of money, a few months of time to find a few vulnerabilities. Now with AI, one person or a small group of people with much less money can find hundreds of vulnerabilities within a few minutes. So we will see a totally new scale of cyber attacks in the future. We will see that our traditional cybersecurity solutions will not work anymore. And so I think this will be a major threat for individuals, for our economy, and also for our societies, because cyber attacks on critical infrastructure, they can create a lot of chaos in our societies.
So do you think the U.S. is ready for this, Sebastian? I mean, we've been reporting a lot on Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent's meeting with the AI players and the major banks as he tried to ensure that industry is ready for potential bad actors with agentic AI. Do you believe with all of these cyber threats that you're talking about, the U.S. is ready to actually overcome and fight back?
See the manufacturing consensus that I'm talking about? That, see, build something, scare them, and everybody's going to be buying into it. You know why they're doing this? Because Silicon Valley ran out of good ideas. Just take a look at Apple. I mean, Apple's a great company. Designs pretty cool looking stuff. But have they really come up with a really good idea lately? No. We're being sold a bill of goods that we really don't need. And they're trying to scare us. Scare us. You need this. Corporate America and the sovereigns, you need this. Because they're a huge threat. So they get onto these business channels, pump up in the investor community some interest, and then all of a sudden they get more seed money, higher valuation, and then all of a sudden they aren't private anymore, they go public. They exit out, they make $1 bazillion, but yet they've created weapons of mass destruction.
Cyber activity.
So first of all, I think if we are honest with ourselves, we have to admit that nobody can really be ready, because AI is changing everything in such a fast way that nobody exactly knows how the world or cyber threats will look in 6 months from now or in 12 months from now. What we know is that the traditional way to defense will not work anymore. And I think if we look at the US, we can probably say that, of course, the US and China are the two nations that are the most advanced. So I think if someone is more or less ready, then it's definitely the US. But also here, I think the situation will be a very different one in a few months from now. We are mainly working in Southeast Asia, in Middle East, and in Europe to support countries that don't have the same tools that the US or China have at the moment.
I see. Let me switch gears, Sebastian, get your take on Andy Burnham, officially becoming the new Prime Minister of the UK. He's positioned himself with socialist policies. His proposed agenda includes extensive state ownership of utilities and expanded social housing. But Sebastian, President Trump is praising Burnham's idea to open access to the North Sea oil. Your reaction to the new Prime Minister in the UK?
Well, I'm probably a bit biased. I'm a conservative. I was in government in Austria for 10 years. I'm pretty much worried when I look how the UK developed in the last few years. But in general, I think the UK is a great country. There are elections ahead, so let's see what the future will bring. In general, I think no matter if it's the EU or the United Kingdom, the most important thing is to stay competitive. We live in a world that is changed by AI, that is changed by technology. And if you look at the economic figures, then we have to admit that economy should be much better in Europe and the UK. And I think there's a lot of work to do for us, not to lose the global race and not to lose competitiveness compared to the US or China.
Sebastian, do you believe the U.S. is winning the AI race with China?
Well, I think it's difficult to say. I think that both countries, the US and China, are definitely far ahead, especially when it comes to foundational models. I think it's very difficult to catch up for other parts of the world, like Europe, for example.
Yeah.
I think when it comes to use cases, when it comes to sovereign AI solutions, there's still a lot of room also for other parts of the world. On foundational models, I think the US and China will stay ahead. And comparing the US and China, I think if you look at open models, probably China will win this race, but probably too early to say.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you do think China is moving forward then, Stephen?
Justifies the outlay, the spending on building out the AI infrastructure.
Right. In a couple of areas that I think investors look at is, we've seen you spend all this money on AI. We want to see the return. And how do we see the return? Well, it can be in faster revenue growth rates at the top line, or maybe improved profit margins. One or both of those, we need to see more of it and more consistent of it. And I think the companies that do that, they get rewarded, and those that don't, like an IBM, which says that it's impacting their top line, that's a real problem.
You also wonder, we've seen this with banks. Every earnings season, bank report their results, the banks overall, and then they go to and tap the debt market.
Yes.
A lot of these hyperscalers have already tapped the debt market. They're going to report results. We know they still need to raise more money. Do they go and tap the debt market again after these earnings?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm looking at some of these CapEx numbers from some of these hyperscalers and some of the other players in that tech stack. Man, they seem big.
Yeah, hundreds of billions of dollars, easily.
So I think a lot of the investors who bought some of these equity deals and investment-grade credit bond deals, I think they're under the expectation that they're going to see more issuance.
Yeah, definitely. It's crowding out a lot of the issuance in other markets because the Alphabets, the Amazon, they're looking to raise money, not just in the U.S. debt market.
And as they get more and more in debt, they're going to have the writing's on the wall. They're going to have to create a profit, or they're going to have a problem. That's the reason why shorting tech, shorting the semiconductor industry, shorting AI and big data may actually make some sense. All right. The S&P 500 is trading at 7,472 right now, and VIX is at 1824. Things are a little bit stable at the moment, but it may drift down. And keep in mind, there was approximately 4% drawdown on the South Korean market yesterday. All right, so that's tied to the tech industry. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the magnesium and zinc. This will help to boost up your immune system and help with your brain function. Vitamin C and magnesium helps with your immune system, brain function, and skin health. This stacks really well with the collagen. Vitamin C will cross-link with the collagen and help with the dermal layer. If you drink filtered water, that water will help that vitamin C and collagen to cross-link. Clarity factor helps with brain function, helps to get rid of that brain fog, allows you to concentrate. And over time, what will happen is that your dendritic connections will improve. You'll have positive neuroplasticity. You'll be thinking faster and have better memory. This is very important to take every day to improve your brain function. And detoxifying your body, super important. They'll help your immune system, your endocrine system, and your other organ systems. Zeolite is a great way to detoxify your body from heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals. Take 3 small drops underneath your tongue, drink it with filtered water. Now you can take a heavier detox by taking 5 to 10 small drops underneath your tongue. Drink the filtered water, do that every day until the bottle's done, and do that once or twice a year. But I recommend this lower dose of 3 small drops underneath your tongue. Drink the filtered water and do that daily throughout the whole year. This zeolite you can take every day. Not everybody's zeolite you can, but this one you can. And it's a great way to detoxify your body. Another great way to detoxify your body is to take the heirloom barley. Heirloom barley detoxifies, brings down inflammation, and soaks up free radicals. And when you do that, you're slowing down the aging process. You're also helping your immune system, your endocrine system, cardiovascular system, and brain function. You'll recover quicker after a workout by taking this. Now, I also have the gladiator barley, and gladiator barley does all the things that the heirloom barley does, but has one added benefit. It helps to build muscle. So do resistance training and build that muscle. This stacks really well with the Myotrol, which helps with the gene expression to build muscle. So if you're older, you need to build some muscle, reduce that atrophy, take the gladiator barley. And I highly recommend you stacking it with the Myotrol. Now, if you're an athlete, younger or older, take the Myotrol and gladiator barley together, do some resistance training for your sport, and you will gain those strength gains for your sport, and you'll be able to your endurance and your overall performance in that sport will improve. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order.
I think Americans were happy, and I think that if you had to remember this tournament, you'll remember exciting matches up until the final.
Right. Well, what happened in the final game? I mean, how can a team like Argentina with the greatest player in the world not get a shot on goal for like pretty much
the whole match?
Yeah.
It didn't. I mean, they took 2 shots, and neither one of them were a shot on. I think it were 2 shots on goal. But listen, Spain was dominant the entire tournament. I believe they conceded 1 goal throughout the whole thing, and it was very clear that their skill level, the pressure that they applied to Argentina, just flustered them throughout the entire match. So much so that it never felt like Argentina was even advancing the ball into Spain's half of the field. And ultimately, it was really a matter of if Argentina could hold on to penalties, and they could.
And they were frustrated at the end of the game as well, with a lot of pushing and shoving after the final whistle had been blown. What this particular World Cup really demonstrated was that because it was held in North America, it was bigger than ever before, more profitable than ever before. They want to expand that even further, don't they?
They'd like to expand it from 48 to 64 teams. Gianni Infantino has talked about it. I don't know if that's necessarily a good idea, just because although there are a lot of Cinderella stories, they will add more countries. Evidently, like you look at who the Final Four was, and who the round of 16 was, it was still the larger countries and the more dominant soccer powers around the globe. We have not seen a true Cinderella story make it to the World Cup finals in a very long time. It's only 8 nations that have ever won it, and it's a 100-year existence. So I think it's fun, but if all these countries, these smaller countries, go out in the round of 32 or the round of 64, then it's not so good.
Again, I think it was successful that the host cities did a good job, and I think they did a great job. I think the fans from around the world actually had a really good time in the U.S. It's press reportings, and they love going to Buc-ee's and doing all the crazy stuff here in this country. Net, win-win, right? So that makes a question, will we get it again?
I think so. I think when you look at the schedule, we have 2030, which will be in Portugal, Spain, and Morocco. We have 2034, which will take place in Saudi Arabia. I think in 2038, the World Cup will likely be back here. I think it remains to be seen if that partnership will extend again between Mexico and Canada all over again, because the U.S. has more than enough stadium, and we don't know who the president is going to be and if that person will want all of it to be in the U.S. But I think that if you're FIFA, of course you're going to be in a rush to bring it back here.
Yeah, Infantino definitely made an investment to make sure that his relationship with the president was as positive and as robust as could possibly be, to the point where in yesterday's ceremony where they were handing over the World Cup to the Spanish team, the president kind of stayed on stage for a little bit longer than you might have thought he would have.
I believe, and I have not confirmed this, but when they posted the pictures with Spain holding up the trophy, the video looks like President Trump is in it, but the photo does not. So I don't know if someone edited him out, but it was clear. It's always awkward when a federal official is on stage with people, unless he's one of them. That was not the Spain's president. And so President Trump is part of this. He made getting to the stadium hellish. That was the longest media line that I've ever stood in.
Wait, what time did you get to the stadium?
I got to the stadium around 10:30. Maybe
For a 3 p.m.
let's say 11. Let's say 11. I did not get into MetLife Stadium until 1:30. So I stood in line for 90 minutes.
And you're a media credential dude.
Yeah, exactly. So I had the bright idea, like, let me get there early. They're giving out some pins. I want the collector's edition pin or whatever. Didn't get it, and got into the stadium just 90 minutes before the match after being there 4 hours early.
All right, so this is a feel-good story with the World Cup and FIFA. I got potentially downer one. Major League Baseball, I'm of the opinion we're not going to play baseball next year, and that is not good. Tell me the background there.
They have a lot of momentum on the field. You think about how the last couple World Series, Yankees, Dodgers, Blue Jays, a 7-game series and a 6-game series, but they are far apart on negotiations. The salary cap is a word that is allergic to the MLB Players Association, and that's all that the owners want to talk about. There's a lot of campaigning for the owners to try to get fans on their side. I don't know if that's going to work for the players, because ultimately you're not negotiating with the fans.
Correct.
You're negotiating with the players, and the players are smart. They're not just going to be like, oh yeah, the fans are on the owner's side, so we should do that. Like, I don't know that there's going to be a season. I'm not optimistic.
Are there talks scheduled? I mean, are they talking regularly right now?
They're talking regularly. Talks have not been called off. But when you have something that is just as critical as a salary cap that has not existed for baseball, and now you're trying to implement one, you're not going to get $300, $400, $500, $700 million contracts for players and deferred payments if a salary cap is in place. And you think about what the MLB has said, which is these rules would require a lot of teams to shed cap space. It would do what the NBA has done with the second apron and reallocate the talent across the entire league. But if an owner doesn't want to spend, an owner's not going to spend.
So is the goal here to create parity across the teams? Is that what the league wants?
Yes, because if you are a free agent, what is the first thing you should do? You should probably go talk to the Dodgers to see if they're willing to sign, and then go.
And then the Yankees.
Right, then the Yankees, and then see what other opportunities are out there. And the reality is like, if you are a free agent, why would you ever go talk to the Pittsburgh Pirates?
Yeah.
They haven't paid their own pitcher.
All right, very good. Brandon Williams, U.S. sports business reporter, joining us here in studio. Red headline crossing the Bloomberg terminal. Rachel Reeves resigns as UK Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Expected.
So we expect to see something. For our listeners in the U.S., a reminder, you can listen to us via satellite radio on Sirius XM Channel 121. Access the world's only global audio business network, coast to coast, 24 hours a day. Bloomberg Radio on Sirius XM Channel 121 is presented by Goldman Crest Metals. Stay tuned for the latest market news and industry research. Bloomberg Intelligence starts the second hour right now.
All right, let's listen into how Netanyahu issues scathing response to Mamdani's detention idea.
Socialist Mayor Zohran Mamdani pushing to arrest the leader of America's closest Mideast ally, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, when he visits for the UN General Assembly this September.
I believe that Prime Minister Netanyahu belongs in The Hague. He's a war criminal who has been charged by the International Criminal Court. Whatever the law allows me to do in New York City, that's what we will do, but we won't be writing our own laws to that end.
But Bibi is pushing back, writing on X, quote, Mr. Mamdani should focus on fixing the damage his policies have caused New York. Mamdani appears interested in diverting public attention from his follies and attacking the leader of the Jewish state and the only democracy in the Middle East. Former Libertarian presidential candidate Austin Peterson joins me now. Austin, to be clear, the U.S. is not a member of the ICC, which put out this arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu, and federal law prohibits state and local governments, i.e. New York City, from cooperating with ICC requests. So why is Mamdani doing this fake tough guy act anyway?
He knows it plays well to his base. Good morning, Todd. Good morning, Miss Missouri from Jefferson City. You know, Mamdani's Israel derangement syndrome, and this isn't a new obsession, Todd. Back in 2023, at the Democratic Socialists of American Convention, Mamdani told the crowd, when the boot of the NYPD is on your neck, it's been laced by the IDF. The UN ambassador, Mike Waltz, laid out the legal walls that the mayor would have to knock down, and he simply can't, because America never signed on to the Rome Statute, like you pointed out. The UN headquarters agreement grants diplomatic protection to visiting heads of government. Head of state immunity applies, and federal authority just frankly outguns the mayor's press conference wish list every time. It turns out that running American foreign policy and running New York City are two different jobs. Who knew, Todd?
Who knew? Well, maybe not this guy, anti-Israel streamer Hassan Piker, delivering a far-left speech to college Democrats, all while dressed in Mao Zedong garb. Watch this.
No more to the Democrats who compromise, who conciliate, and who betray us. No more to the Democrats who will collaborate and cooperate with the fascists, who will fund ICE, who will fund Israel, who will help poison the planet, who will stiff workers and help bosses. We don't need those Democrats anymore. We are coming. We are on boss. We're on bot. We're unbound. And we will become undeniable.
Forget the Democrats, Austin. Shouldn't that clip be in every Republican ad between now and the midterms that this Marxist and people like him, you know, the people clapping there in the audience, want to take over your way of life?
Yeah, the Republicans are loving this stuff, Todd. They want to run on this. It kind of reminds me of that Dwight Schrute clip from The Office when he was doing the speech like he was Mussolini. Communism killed 100 million people, and all we got was that lousy jacket. You know, this guy's cosplaying the guy responsible for the deadliest famine in human history like it's just a fun bit. This is a guy who went to China and said that he felt no ties to America, and then he went on Cuba on a trip whose funding source has him now being subpoenaed by the Treasury Department. This guy isn't a revolutionary. This guy did not come up from the ranks of the proletariat. This guy's a Nepo baby. He Twitch streamed his way into a bigger platform. His uncle, Cenk Uygur, signed all the checks. The guy lives in a $2.7 million West Hollywood mansion. Now it's worth north of $3.5 million, I think. And he sits behind a gate so the fans and paparazzi can't get to him. In his own defense, when people called out his hypocrisy, he said he'd rather be a rich socialist than a broke person defending capitalism. Well, at least he's honest. The revolution lives behind a gated community, Todd.
It is insane, the hypocrisy that he demonstrates. So the big question is, what are Democrats doing about it? Here's at least two of them.
There's some crazy stuff, you know, when we're cheering for the Intifada and DSA, again, they say things like, you know, takeover of key industries, government. That's communism.
But what does that have to do with supporting Hamas? What does that have to do with putting up candidates who say we should have no police, no prisons, we can't deport anybody, even if they commit rape or murder, Israel shouldn't exist? These are terrible ideas.
Austin, we're running late here, so I need a quick answer, but are the Democrats too late? Has the cancer already overrun the body?
Oh, for sure. Axios reported this same week, Todd. Republicans are quietly building their whole midterm strategy around this. They're calling this a hate election. They're pointing to the Democrats' Tea Party-like revolt by progressives. This is proof that the party can't govern, and why young people are not only Richard Nixon maxing, as I know you guys have reported here before on Fox and Friends First, but the young people are actually longing for a return to the days of Joseph McCarthy and wondering, did he go far enough?
The problem with that article is Republicans are saying, hey, you may not like us, but they're worse. Republicans need to come up with a better strategy than just that between now and November. Austin, got to leave it there. Thank you, sir.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.
and ultimately, in the bigger picture, help the technology giant deal with a shortfall in AI computing. This chip would be separate from Google's existing AI chips, which are called TPUs. Those are already out there on the market. And the report says the company plans to deploy this new frozen chip as soon as 2028. That again, all from the information citing two people familiar with the matter. And the stock, ticker GOOGL, up nearly 3% this morning.
Okay, and of course, Alphabet will be reporting earnings later on this week as well. What's next on your list?
Another AI-linked name, Hut8, they're sort of a data center computing company, up nearly 10% after the company announced a $9.8 billion deal for computing power at a Texas data center campus. That's a 15-year lease for 352 megawatts of IT capacity with the same tenant that already had a lease at the site. This company has pivoted from Bitcoin mining into data center computing. It's a familiar story. This rally, the latest sign investors are rewarding this kind of pivot. You actually even just look at this company. They have a majority-owned subsidiary, American Bitcoin, that still does crypto mining. Those shares down about 80% this year. Hut8, that's ticker HUT, has more than doubled.
AMC, what do you have for us?
AMC, I've got another gainer for you, up about 16% now. That's ticker AMC after the movie theater chain reported second quarter profit that beat expectations. Their adjusted earnings about $321 million, excluding taxes and other items. Analysts were looking for about $203 million in adjusted EBITDA. Our colleagues at BI point out attendance was strong in the quarter. Free cash flow turned positive in the first half of the year. That's driving a lot of the trading. Also worth noting, though, Christopher Nolan's Odyssey had a strong debut over the weekend.
I saw it.
$125 million. Was it good?
It was good. 3 hours, but it was good.
I'm excited. Well, a lot of people did see it. Nearly $125 million at the domestic box office. BI says that's helping theaters in the period of soft attendance.
All right, Matt, thank you so much. Matthew Griffin is our Bloomberg News equities reporter, and for more conversations like this, subscribe to our Stock Movers Reports, where we offer 5-minute audio reports on the biggest winners and losers in the stock market. You can subscribe to Stock Movers on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you listen. We talk a lot about this younger generation of consumers, Gen Z, and how their spending is very different than, say, Gen X or boomers. They like to spend on experiences. I mean, they do buy some hardcore products. They're rediscovering things like landlines and Polaroid cameras. What does it look like when it comes to beauty products? What does it look like when it comes to that part of the consumer market? Let's bring in Lindsay Dutch. She is our BI senior industry analyst covering this sector, and she joins us now. And Lindsay, you and your team put together some research on what Gen Z likes, what they don't like. What did you find?
Yeah, hi Scarlett, thanks for having me. We ran our semi-annual beauty survey, and we just got the results back. And in general, when you look at the market, it's a $120 billion market in the US. Demand is relatively soft for beauty. It kind of weakened a little bit over the past 6 to 12 months. It's sitting near lows, 2-year lows based on our series of surveys. But one thing that stood out was Gen Z. Gen Z tends to have more intensive beauty routines. A lot more of them use a lot of product compared to average on our survey. And their demand signals that I look at, which is, would you cut back on other things before beauty? How important is continuing your beauty routine? Are you trying new products? When I look at those types of indicators, Gen Z not only shows steady demand, but it actually seems to be improving, which is a pretty big contrast to what we're seeing in the broader market.
So Gen Z, they're very, very comfortable with buying pretty much anything and everything online. How about beauty?
Yeah, so Gen Z does show a high interest of shopping in store. Our survey shows about 75% of that cohort prefers to shop in store for beauty. They like to see the product. They like to test it out on their skin. So they are interested in that, but they do use online for discovery. So social media is very big for beauty and discovering new products. Gen Z, a lot of them do look there for inspiration. And one interesting fact, I asked a question about, what would inspire you to buy something that you were not shopping for? And Gen Z ranked seeing it on social media ahead of a discount on a certain product. More broader results were that, a discounted product would spur them to make that purchase decision.
So within your research, you also find that Gen Z leans into fragrance. How do you discover fragrance online?
Yeah, fragrance discovery is hard online, but Gen Z is fueling sort of a pickup in the fragrance market. And with this trend called fragrance layering, which is basically buying a lot of different products for scent. You can do lotion, you could do a spray, and sort of they mix them all together to kind of create their own personal scent. This is driving demand in the industry, and it's demand from mass brands all the way up to luxury. So it's something that we're seeing, and the survey results really sort of validated that. Ulta, who caters to the younger consumer, they're really looking to be a leader in fragrance, really expanding that assortment and trying to capture that demand.
Lindsay, thanks so much. Appreciate talking to you. Lindsay Dutch, she is consumer hardline senior analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence, joining us from Princeton via the camera down there. Lots of IPOs. That's certainly been the score for much of 2026. And we said the big investment banks reported earnings last week, and they were touting how much the deals they're getting done and how good their pipeline looks. And we got more still coming here. That's keeping our next guest very busy. Billy Lipschultz, senior equities reporter for Bloomberg News. Moonshot AI. Oh boy, I'm afraid to ask. What is this thing and when is it coming?
You haven't heard of Moonshot AI?
No, I have not.
You are not? What? Really? Really? Oh my gosh. I mean, they moved markets on Friday. They're the reason that
Friday I was on that beach.
Oh, you look like you got some sun. Okay, Moonshot runs the Kimi model. Kimi K3 was the latest one. Kimi K3 is a AI.
Do I have to put that on now? Next to Claude and
well, they're a Chinese company and they're open source. So I think I know your answer there. But so this is a company that really burst onto the scene while you were on a beach enjoying the nice weather. That really kind of took the world by storm, I guess you could say. And very quickly, Bloomberg is reporting they are now eyeing a Hong Kong IPO in the next 6 months. So that would be a quick turnaround. Company is, according to our reporting, working to close a funding round at $30 billion valuation. So relatively small potatoes compared to the Anthropics and OpenAIs of the world. But it is pretty interesting just given again, became, for some, a household name overnight, similar to that DeepSeek moment we had a few years back.
Yeah, and trying to capitalize on that excitement. It's a Beijing-based startup. It's held talks with China International Capital Corp and Goldman Sachs about working on an offering. The one part of the deals market that's been kind of sluggish is exits from private equity and exiting their investments and listing them on the public markets. Jersey Mike's is kind of in defiance of that if it actually does go through with an IPO.
Yeah, and we've seen actually Blackstone try to live up to their promises from Jonathan Gray that this was going to be the year of the IPO. They did take out Blackstone Digital, which is kind of an AI data center roll-up firm, and they also took out Liftoff, which is in the app space. But Jersey Mike's more of a household name. I think you've been to one of those.
Yes.
Okay, so you know Jersey Mike's. The company and their backers, including Blackstone, looking to sell up to $1.1 billion in this IPO, would value the company at about $8 billion. So that is kind of a big valuation relative to most kind of growing casual chains, if you will. The big pitch, at least when I talk to investors, is they look at the success from Kava, they look at Jersey Mike's Blackstone asset, but they brought in the leadership team from Wingstop. So you have seasoned vets running the show. You have Blackstone, which is going to make a decent amount of money on this IPO. And then you also have the international pitch. They partnered with the Jersey Mike's founder to help lead an expansion in the UK. So fast-growing, pretty darn good franchise model here in the US, international ambitions, and a private equity sponsor is what.
And BlackRock owned this for about a cup of coffee. Let's be honest. When they bought this just a few years ago.
Blackstone closed the deal in January of last year.
Yeah.
So in terms of the turn, 1.5 years.
This is awesome for them. I mean, and their IRR, I'll go through the math on the train ride home. But I'm going to guess our IRR is monstrous.
Yeah, it's a big return, and it's a quick return in a time when people, to Scarlett's point, private equity hasn't been super active in getting these exits. The interesting thing is you step back when that deal was announced back in November of 2024, and consumer bankers were like, this is a company that could have gone public then. So then you bring in Blackstone, they do a little bit of private equity magic, but again, they bring in an experienced management team, get the operations where they want it, in a quick turn, quick money, and at least when I talk to folks on the buy side, they like it.
And that is super important when they go out to raise the next fund, which is, when I was looking at private equity maybe 20 years ago, I was told pretty easy to raise money. It's really easy to invest money. It's really hard to sell, to get a good exit. So the way you raise money is to say, hey, I'm generating returns. I'm getting exits, successful exits.
And they happen to be, I mean, Blackstone obviously is huge, but you're not overexposed to software, which is a good timing, because you talk to some of the folks at the Thoma Bravos of the world, and it's like, okay, well, you're super bullish on software. This is the opposite time.
Totally different narrative, right? Very quickly, Bill, is there anything new with Anthropic or OpenAI going public?
This week, Anthropic is meeting with some of the largest long-only investors. We put that out at the end of last week, so that'll be the formal starting, to my understanding, of testing the waters meetings, talking about what the size could look like, what the company looks like. Again, a lot of these funds own it, so they're meeting with Dario and team that they know. But the big thing is this seems to be indicating that September-October timeframe is in play, whereas OpenAI, for all intents and purposes, is very much seen as a 2027 story.
And are we expecting activity to, once everybody gets back from vacation, September, kick back in? Is that kind of?
Yeah, we get a little burst with Jersey Mike's. People expect Cumberland Farms.
Cumberland Farms?
Yeah, they follow. Yeah, EG Group. Yeah, that'll be another big one.
That's a competitor to Wawa, John. So, I mean, you're a Cumberland Farms person, you're a Wawa person. I don't know how you go with it.
Cumberland Farms is, no, I'm not going to characterize it as like good in trouble. But
I've never been there.
Wawa reigns supreme.
Wawa stands on its own. All right, Billy, thank you so much. Billy Lipschultz, Bloomberg News, senior.
Please go to my store at the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Orange Splash lozenges or the Manuka honey lozenges. They're made from structural nanosilver. They'll help to neutralize. Perfect for the allergy season, the cold season, even in areas where you're having the smoke that's coming from the north. There's Canadian fires, and many cities within the United States are having problems, especially in the Midwest. So take this structural nanosilver lozenges, and it's going to help to protect that oral pharynx and create those secretions to help maintain that barrier and help that epithelial cells. Those epithelial cells, if they're disrupted, it can cause irritation, upper respiratory infection. You don't want that. You want to mitigate that. So take the structural nanosilver lozenges. They're perfect for the cold season and the allergy season. And working outside. If you're in the garden or cleaning around the house, perfect to take as a prophylactic to make sure you protect that oral pharynx. So please go to my store and get those structural nanosilver lozenges. And I also have probiotics. You can get the powder version or the veggie cap version. By taking a good probiotic, you're going to be able to improve your gut biome, bring down inflammation, improve the immune system of the gut biome. Your metabolism will improve, your skin will improve, and you'll be able to sleep better. And by sleeping better, you're going to be able to improve your brain function, because you'll get into those 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep that allows you to consolidate memory and detoxify your central nervous system. Yes, by improving your gut biome, you can improve your brain function. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the probiotics, either in the powder version, which is the version I usually take, or the veggie cap version. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com. Please go to my store, use discount 5, and you save some money. All caps, discount 5. All right, there's a great exodus out of New York because of the crazy tax issue that's happening. Let's listen into Fox Business.
With Base 44, a simple sentence becomes your website.
We're the most overtaxed state in America. Our electric bills are 70% higher
than the national average, and she has declared a war on high net worth individuals. That's why they're leaving.
America's economic map is transforming as people flee New York and California in droves. IRS data showing the 10 counties losing the most taxpayers are all located in those two states. And, well, they're going to red states, with Texas and Florida leading the pack. But New York's governor blaming the president.
Back then, big driver, people leaving. You could draw a through line from when the Donald Trump administration and Congress got rid of the state and local tax deduction. All of a sudden, everybody in New York paid higher taxes, so it got more expensive to be here just with the signing of that law. 2017, 2019.
Budget year.
Those are the years when people started the out-migration of businesses and individuals. And then
people are leaving New York because of the commies, right? People are leaving New York because of the crime. If you have been paying attention across the west side of Manhattan, from 34th Street going all the way up to 55th Street, there's tenement houses starting to, tenant dwellings on the street. It's looking like, literally like LA. So safety is an issue. And people are leaving New York because the budgets are out of control. They're budgeting for all these social programs that no one can afford and wants to raise your taxes. So she wants to blame Trump. Well, what she really could do is trim the budget for the state level, and the city in New York, for New York City, needs to trim the budget. I don't know, the budget in New York City is like $120 billion, something like that. I'd have to look it up, but it's close to that. That's way too high. They need to trim it down, trim it down. So instead of saying more freebies, why not say less taxation? This is the reason why people are going to Florida.
In 2020, get slammed with the pandemic.
I don't even know where I'm speechless. It might have started a little bit with SALT, but you cannot blame this mass exodus on the state and local tax deduction, which, by the way, they've put back now, and people are seeing that in their tax bill. I mean, she has to try to spin it some way, because she can't admit that it's her policies and endorsing Zohran Mamdani and what's happening in New York City that is driving people out. This has become one of the most expensive states to live in, city as well. People are sick of it. I think educated people understand that it's a policy issue. You know, we're talking about, like, what if we did man on the street yesterday and we asked people on the left, or people who voted for Mamdani or Hochul, do you understand that electricity prices that you complain about here are high because of the policies, and that in red states, they're not that high because of their policies? People just love to blame Donald Trump, Trump derangement syndrome, it's all his fault, the prices are still too high, blah, blah, blah. And what she's doing right there is just trying to deflect and spin the mess that she has created. By the way, she shouldn't even really be in office. She only got in office because Cuomo messed up. Yeah, I mean, yeah, right. Nobody really wanted her there. Brian, what if I say, well, of course the top 10 counties who are leaving are in California and New York, because those are within the top 4 populous states. California is the top populous state, and then you have Texas and Florida, but then you have New York. Yeah. So of course you're going to make the top 10 because you have the most people. Did you buy that?
No, they're populous states because people went there. They wanted to be there. Yeah. So if they're leaving because they don't want to be there. Even if people left because of the SALT thing, Jackie.
I just don't buy it, but yeah.
But the root of the SALT thing is taxes are really high here.
Right. Yeah.
So as soon as you lose your special deal to neutralize high taxes, what are you left with? High taxes. When people leave your state, it's like somebody's doing an intervention on you. You have a problem and we want you to see it. And Kathy Hochul is in the middle of the intervention, and she's like, you're all wrong. You're the problem, not me. It is not going to end well if that's how you handle your intervention.
I think a lot of it is just a simple math problem. If you make $100,000, I ran the numbers on 100 and a million. If you make $100,000 and you live in Florida, after you pay taxes, you have $78,000. If you live in New York, you then have $72,000. Yeah. It's just you're losing 6 or 7% of your income, and I did New York City 68 because you get the city tax in there too. On $1 million, you're losing almost $100,000 difference between living in Florida versus living in New York City.
Wow. It's real money.
Well, yeah, if you can go and work on a Wall Street job as they're all building down in Florida and go and live down there, be in the sun and make $100,000 more.
It's not like the homeless
the
West Side homeless encampment isn't worth $100,000 extra you're paying. It just isn't, right? That's the pitch Hochul's trying to make. It ain't working.
Is there any good news for us, Dagan?
Nope.
Give me a reason to stay.
Just coming to you for good news.
Besides you.
Jersey beckons.
Uh-oh. But it's not that much better.
It is if you don't, well, it is because you're not in New York City.
I mean,
And you're not, you're just
marginally.
not in New York City. And it really boils down to how are you being treated?
Yeah.
Not just your money. Obviously, your money is being treated like shinola, but you as a human being are being treated poorly by these left-wing politicians.
They don't want to.
Because again, if you experience any hardship, you see it with Kathy Hochul, it's not their responsibility, it's somebody else's problem. That when there were people marauding and rioting in the street here, and we were trying to come to work and they were jumping on, like you were in a car and they jump on the hood of a car, where was their responsibility for protecting us when we were trying to just get to a job? They just didn't give a flying damn. They love your money, but they hate you.
Okay, so there's no reason to stay. Got that.
I don't understand why any business is here.
I know. We'll discuss that with our bosses in the commercial break. Coming up.
It's a family crisis that's unfolding in real time. A mother is patting her 10-month-old baby boy on the back after he starts choking on a piece of pancake. We kind of hit him on the back, but
when we did have the ceasefire with Iran, that oil prices might plummet down to 40. We really don't see that. In fact, now we're seeing oil up in the low 80s. We think the best earnings this quarter are actually going to come from energy. At least that's the forecast. And we think the higher oil prices are certainly helping. But we think they are also entering what we call new leadership, which would tell us that we're probably not going to see $40 oil. Now, when we look very longer term, meaning WTI oil, trades at a range between 150. It overshoots on both sides, but we think we could probably trade somewhere around the 70s and the 60s over time. We think that's going to be great for corporate profits for the energy companies. So they're considered value, and we are recommending that our clients begin to diversify into value. And we do like the banks as value, and we continue to like energy as well.
Fantastic. Marianne Bartels, thank you so much. Chief Investment Strategist at Sanctuary Wealth, giving us her outlook for the markets there. She favors the energy sector. All right, let's talk a little bit about a group of companies that rely heavily on the energy sector, and that is aviation. Sid Phillip is our Bloomberg Chief Correspondent for Global Aviation, and he is over in the UK at the Farnborough Air Show, where Boeing is expected to really put up a big sales pitch there to win some orders. Sid, good to speak with you. Just kind of give us the lay of the land here as the Farnborough Air Show gets underway.
Thanks for having me, Scarlett. So for Boeing, this is obviously a very important moment. Previous Farnborough Air Shows haven't really panned out for the company because they had the incident with the door plug a few years ago when the Farnborough Show was held last. And then last year at Paris, which alternates with Farnborough, Boeing largely sat out after the Air India 787 crash. So for Boeing, this is a sort of way to come back after 2 years of not really putting any orders out of these air shows. And also for the company, it's a way of sort of turning the corner on all its problems and being able to sort of look at the next phase of growth, looking at turning around the company and actually starting to generate cash again.
Sid, what's the update? What's the current status of Boeing in China? When will they be able to maybe start business there again?
So we're looking on China to see when those orders will actually materialize. I mean, they came back from President Trump's visit to China with a bunch of orders, smaller than they expected, but still a significant amount of 250 planes. And we're looking to see when that deal is actually going to be finalized. Today at Farnborough, not quite China, but SMBC Aviation Capital purchased 100 Boeing 737s. We also saw orders from the Philippines as well as Saudi Arabia's Riyadh Air. And so for Boeing, they're winning orders for their 737 MAX and their 787. Now we look to see when that big China order will materialize.
Meantime, Airbus, which is a big rival to Boeing, it's basically a duopoly here when it comes to aircraft manufacturing. It's getting a lot of demand from China, isn't it?
Airbus has. I mean, just yesterday, Airbus signed a 95 plane order from China. They've been sort of seeing record flows from China, including from Chinese airlines for both their A321 narrow-body aircraft as well as the A350 aircraft, which is their sort of flagship wide-body aircraft. So China is sort of ordering a lot of Airbus planes, and they have been sort of. Airbus also, remember, has a production facility in China where they produce the A321, so it's one of their final assembly lines.
So talk to us about India as a market. Where is it in terms of relative importance? What are they buying, and who are they buying it from?
So we've seen India buying a bunch of planes at previous air shows. We had that record order in Paris for Indigo's 500 plane order. We've had record orders from Air India. Now it's actually a question of putting that sort of those metal in the skies actually, and actually getting that aviation sector kicked up, because India is one of the world's biggest aviation sectors, and there is a lot of potential. I mean, both Airbus and Boeing have in their global outlooks flagged the potential of the Indian market. Now it's just a question of actually getting those planes in the air and getting those flying. I mean, obviously Airbus and Boeing have very long backlogs, and so it'll be a while before those planes are actually in service. But we will look to see when the Indian airline, both Indigo and Air India, scale up their networks, especially their long-haul networks, because those are the ones that typically are controlled by airlines like Emirates and Etihad and Qatar Airways in massive business connecting traffic from India.
Sid, before we let you go, in addition to speaking with folks from the aircraft manufacturers and the airlines themselves, you also had a conversation with the FAA's deputy administrator and their role in monitoring Boeing. What did you learn from Chris Rocheleau?
So we spoke to Chris Rocheleau this morning, and he talked about how Boeing has been able to win back the authorization they had to certify planes before they deliver to customers. The FAA put out a statement on Friday saying that Boeing will be authorized again to issue those final checks and final sign-off on those 737s and 787s. They had lost that authority when we had those quality outages in 2024, and we sort of had that massive door plug falling out of the Alaska plane, and that uncovered a lot of quality issues at Boeing. And so since then, Boeing sort of had to scale back production. They've also had to depend on FAA for sign-off of every single plane that they make. In recent months, they've been authorized to ramp up production first to rate 42 and then rate 47 a month on the 737 MAX. And they've also been allowed to alternate with the FAA on signing off those planes. And so now the FAA believes that Boeing has enough to be able to actually sign off on those planes, and they believe that they have enough to get those planes certified.
All right, very good. Sid, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Sid Phillip, Deputy Team Leader for Global Aviation over there at Farnborough outside of London. That's where they buy and sell a lot of these planes between.
We're gonna play a clip from the Hill about the Democratic Socialists of America. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Take this stack. This will really help to slow down the aging process. It's a very powerful stack. You could take them separately, but I recommend stacking them. Turmeric. This is going to soak up free radicals and bring down inflammation. Lignans soaks up free radicals and brings down inflammation, helps the immune system and the endocrine system. Ashwagandha root. Super important to control your cortisol levels and your blood glucose levels. When you stack these together, it's a very powerful stack to slow down the aging process. Why? because you're soaking up free radicals, you're bringing down that inflammation, you're controlling your blood glucose levels and your cortisol levels, you're helping your immune system and your endocrine system, and by bringing down that inflammation, soaking up those free radicals, you're helping the cardiovascular system and brain function. So you're targeting a lot of different organ systems by stacking these together. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the ashwagandha root, the lignans, and the turmeric. You can take them separately, but I highly recommend you stacking them. And by doing that on a regular basis, you're slowing down that aging process and you're controlling the methylation of your genes. As you get older and you start to accumulate free radicals and inflammation, and your mitochondria health will go down, what happens is the cells start to methylate, the genes start to methylate within these aging cells, and they just don't express the genes appropriately. And that's part of aging. So you want to control that. Now, if you're 40 years of age or older, take vitamin B complex. This will help to boost up your energy levels, rev up your cellular metabolism, and protect your neurons. Omega-3 is something that you should be taking every day to help with your cardiovascular health. It reduces inflammation, reduces the stickiness of your red blood cells, so you're reducing overclotting, and omega-3 helps to control your lipid profile, so you're bringing down your LDL levels and improving your HDL levels. With that, you're reducing plaque formation. Very important. So please, get the omega-3, take it every day. And vitamin D3, it's a gene expression cofactor. It helps your cells to perform properly. If the cells are infected, vitamin D3 helps to get those cells to go into apoptosis. And vitamin D3 is very important for cardiovascular health, but also bone density. Very important. This stacks well with taking a calcium supplement or drinking milk to get those denser bones. And the efficacy of vitamin D3 increases if you take magnesium. So it's synergistic to take the vitamin D3 and the vitamin C and magnesium supplement that I have, or the magnesium and zinc supplement. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
When they tell you who they are, you believe them. The Democratic Socialists of America are doing just that, telling us exactly who they are and what they believe in. They believe in full-on communism, the mass confiscation of your hard-earned money in order to fund their radical vision for society. Sadly, it's beginning to feel inevitable that the Democratic Party will succumb to socialism's deadly influences. I hate to see it. Son Piker just gave a speech at a gathering of the National College Democrats organization, which is affiliated with the DNC. By the way, he looks the part of communist dictator, saying words of choices, but I digress. Representative Steve Cohen, an extremely progressive Dem, says he quit the Congressional Progressive Caucus because most of their leaders are socialists. He's admitting it. Meanwhile, James Carville said recently he doesn't think AOC could possibly get the Dem nomination for president in 2028. And I think that might be true, but only because she isn't far left enough for these people. And who are these people? Well, let's take a closer look. How about starting with his deeply insightful interview on Fox News? Kudos to Martha McCallum for doing it, with Gustavo Gordillo, who co-chairs the New York City DSA. Gordillo's family, by the way, came to the U.S. after escaping Peru during the terror of the Shining Path, far-left Marxist, Leninist, and Maoist terrorist group known for its excessive violence and brutality. One would hope that having had families survive and flee from leftist violence would make you opposed to exporting it, bringing it into your new country, but alas, Gordillo's different. In fact, he blames capitalism rather than the left.
The economic situation in South.
Okay, wait, you still have bots joining your calls? I feel like I have to. No, look, if you're going to use an AI in your meetings, you need to be using Granola.
The economic situation in South America and in Peru was in a really bad place. But I think that much of what we could say is responsible for that actually was the imposition of capitalism, and American imperialism in many cases is actually what brings immigrants to the U.S. coming out of Latin America. And
So they come here because they don't like the imposition of American imperialism in the country that they're in?
McCown points out that makes absolutely no sense. Now, thankfully, it's not the case that all or even most immigrants want to bring socialism to our shores, maybe Nile notwithstanding, but the exceptions like Gordillo are certainly responsible for negative perceptions about the impacts of changing demographics. Gordillo's contempt for private property and private business is so thorough, he goes on to say he hopes government-run grocery stores do put mom-and-pop shops out of business. Listen to this.
Inspiration's great, but if you're the bodega owner, how would you feel if the government opened a big grocery store right next to your bodega?
If one publicly owned grocery store that brings prices down in the neighborhood is enough to put someone out of business, then maybe they shouldn't have been in that business in the first place.
Ah, interesting indeed. Is that really a socialism for you? You have no right to earn a living. The government can swoop in, use its monopoly power to undercut you and drive you out of business, and then what? We're all dependent on the government? Now look, yeah, sure, if the government-run store could really keep us all fed more efficiently than the private market, we'd say, well, there's really no problem with that. But well, of course, we know that is not the case, since no government-run enterprise can actually beat the market in terms of price, choice, and availability. What actually happens is the government loses money and thus requires more and more of your tax dollars to operate its services. Just look at education in New York City, where the government spends more money dollar for dollar failing to educate your kids compared with the private sector. Is that what we want for groceries too? Or how about housing? The Democratic Socialists of America had this to say.
The landlords in New York have been making a 12% return on their investment on average.
What should they make? What's fair for the landlord to make if you don't like 12?
They're complaining that 12 is not enough. And we don't think that anyone should have a constitutional right to double-digit returns on their investment. That's why we've implemented.
No one should have a right to a double-digit return on their investment.
No one has a right. That's not one's in that. That's not in the Constitution. But what we see is that when we implement a rent freeze, we have landlords who are crying that the government is going to put them out of business.
They're trying to run a business, and they're trying to do it effectively.
Now notice the sleight of hand that occurred there. Gordillo asserts no one has a constitutional right to a 12% return on investment, which is correct. No one has a constitutional right to any return on any investment. Rights do not enter into that. Your return on investment is whatever the market delivers for you. You can do better, you can do worse. It's on you. But that's not what he's proposing here. He's proposing through Socialist Mayor Zoran Mondani's rent freeze policies that the government forbid you from collecting a sizable, to him, return on your investment. He is saying the government should decide what's the right amount of money for you to make when you rent out your property. And in a nutshell, this policy, actually more than anything else he said here in this interview, is the perfect encapsulation of why socialism is a failed ideology that does lead to ruin in every single society where it's ever tried.
DSA wants top-down government. They want to control your life. They want to determine what you eat, how you drive your car, where you live. This goes back to what I've been saying for a long time. DSA, these democratic socialists, the ultra-right, these ultra-lib, not the ultra-right, the ultra-lib left. Well, there's a problem with the ultra-left and the ultra-right. But the sad thing is that the ultra-left and the ultra-right end up coming to the same point. All right, but the thing is the ultra-left, they don't believe in the Enlightenment. They believe in postmodernism. They believe in relativism. And a spin off of that philosophy of relativism and this postmodernism is Marxism and communism. We have a constitutional republic that has a beeline right to the Enlightenment, where it's about life, liberty, and property rights. We don't have a democracy, we have a constitutional republic. What does that mean? It means that we elect officials in our government, and we have balance of powers, so no branch of government can overrule the other branch to a point where that branch controls the government. So we have balance of powers, we have an elected government, and we have a constitution that protects our rights at the state level and at the federal level. But when you have people that don't believe in life, liberty, and property rights, and believes in the idea that mob rule should determine what the laws are, just the majority, then you have a problem. And they're going to chip away at that enlightenment. And the pillars of our society rest on the enlightenment: God, country, and family. Do you think an ultra-lib, these democratic socialists, have a strong affinity to God, country, and family? They don't seem to have. So it's really important to realize here that the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, is metastasizing across the country, eroding the enlightenment that is the bedrock of our constitutional republic. Now, the ultra-right is a problem because they're so focused on this nativism and this America first pacifism. And there's a lot of, on the ultra-right, there's racism that also happens, but ultra-left has racism too. That's what I mean, that if you go so far left, you end up ultra-right. If you go so far ultra-right, you end up ultra-left. It's like a circle that meets. It's not a straight line, it's a circle. So both sides are like crazy. The ultra-right wants to erode our Constitution too. So the point here is, what philosophy, what is the underlying philosophy of our society that makes us prosperous? Relativism or the Enlightenment? Relativism roughly came out around the turn of the century, the 20th century, roughly. And then it was kind of codified by a bunch of philosophers in the 20s, 1920s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s. It really took hold during the baby boom generation, where they were deciding that draft dodging was the right thing to do. But it starts around the turn of the last century. And you have individuals, especially coming out of the First War and into the Great Depression, and many societies were like on edge, and they gravitated to socialism. And then you have Keynes and Keynesian economics starting to come onto the scene. And governments love the idea that the central bank could just print more money and solve the problems of society. But yet it creates less efficient societies, more inflation. These are failed policies that erode the Enlightenment.
Economic terms is unscientific. It's the flat earth theory of economic growth. One of the main insights we have in the science of economics is that prices are important signaling mechanisms for markets to function properly. When the government messes with the price system by using legal force to fix prices artificially high or artificially low, then you get chaos. For instance, landlords might decide that 11% growth isn't enough to sustain themselves, so then maybe they sell, get out of the housing business entirely. Maybe they decide they get a better return by turning it into a parking lot, leveling the building. Suddenly, we have less housing, which was the exact opposite of the outcome the government wanted when they implemented the rent freeze. That's why you don't mess with prices. You send bad signals like that making more housing available is a bad investment, and thus something not to pursue in the marketplace.
That's all true what he's saying. But it gets even more pernicious. With relativism, why would you care? If you can get away with something, why would you care what happens after you die? Why would you care if you can extract help from the government and lots of freebies, and it causes inflation and a lack of productivity in the society, as long as you can benefit from it, and then you pass away or go to a different state or whatever, you don't have to pick up the pieces. That's another part of relativism. Why should you care for the future? Why should you care about the youth? Why should you care about the next generation or the generation after? That's relativism. But with the Enlightenment, realizing that society is working towards a better future for everybody, and that each generation has to do some sort of sacrifice or stoicism that allows them to build a foundation for the next generation. And that generation does the same thing and the same thing. That is a better society. That's a society of thinking forward. But when you have a DSA society that's aligned with relativism, why would you care if you hurt the landlords and take away their property? The tenants are going to be able to have a cheaper place, but then over time, it starts to degrade. And then all of a sudden, the building doesn't work as well. And then crime starts to get common in that environment. And then all of a sudden, life starts to decline. And the future generation is now living in this declined environment. But why should you care for the ones that just come in and take it? Because that's what the DSA wants. They're pernicious. And you need to treat it like a cancer. They need to be dug out and destroyed.
At a time when the number one thing we need in this country is more housing. I mean, it's not exactly rocket science what we need to do here. Just get the government out of the way, cut the rules and regulations, particularly environmental and labor ones, that make it hard to build more housing and undercut supposedly greedy landlords that way. Not by mandating that they stop being greedy, but by subjecting them to increased competition in the marketplace, which, by the way, is the only way that anything ever gets less expensive overall and in the long term, more competition. But that's not the socialist way. The socialist way is to put that guy, the guy with the ponytail and the mustache, in charge of running your life and everyone else's. And what could ever go wrong with that?
You should have a paper objection to his mustache and indeed the ponytail.
I don't like mustaches.
Well,
the ponytail's fine.
I'm not a huge fan of mustaches myself. Anyway, look, there are elements of that I do agree with, but bigger elements of it that I disagree with. First of all, to the point before we jump past it about his family coming from Peru and the argument he made there, it seemed to me that Martha McCallum was being slightly obtuse in how she was seeking to understand that. His argument isn't, we hated America, therefore I came to America. His argument is American foreign policy in Latin America and elsewhere led to the instability from which people had to flee. That seems actually quite a valid argument because it is often, I think, short-sighted whenever people in the United States, by which I mean there's a government complex in the United States, will argue or complain about the rise of Fidel Castro and not the support for the Batista regime that preceded it, or complain about the Sandinistas in Nicaragua and not American support for the dictator Somoza who preceded them. There is a valid argument to be made about those policies and the way they fuel instability. Now, as to the bigger argument about kind of price controls is the element that I do somewhat more take your point on. I mean, I think the number of Americans who really believe in a central command economy in that classic Marxist sense is infinitesimally small. I think the reason that DSA and the harder left generally is rising isn't anything to do with that. It's to do with a feeling that corporate power runs too untrammeled, that life is more difficult than it should be for working people, that it has become more difficult than it previously was. I mean, speaking of housing, for example, the median.
It's more difficult because the governments are too expensive. They need to cut their budgets, reduce social programs, so people will have more money to decide where they want to put it. It says the government deciding where to put your money. And if you reduce the taxation, less fraud would be happening.
Price is now something like 5 times the median household income. That, as recently as the 1990s, was about 3 times the median household income. We could go through a whole range of issues, whether it's the cost of university, cost of healthcare, etc., where those kind of dynamics apply. And people, I think, want that pendulum to be pushed back.
Right, but the people they're electing are, I don't think I'm caricaturing them. I mean, you hear what he has to say. It's him and the kind of people who are winning office are rather doctrinaire Marxists, it seems to me. And that worries me greatly because of, yes, not just, they do this bait and switch where their supporters will say, oh, what you're saying, it's socialism to have like a slightly larger welfare state or slightly more social spending. Like, okay, obviously, no, it's not. But it is socialism to do. We would prefer a Soviet or a Maoist model where a central committee decides the price of everything, which is an experiment that has done before and doesn't really work. And and also it does lead to a backlash against immigration when it appears to Americans that the people who want to do that are foreign born. Now
blah, 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 blah. The only way to solve this problem is to actually go and have a civil war. The conservatives, the liberals, whoever wins, wins. Just have a civil war. No, we got to have an info war. We have to have a talking war as your life continues to become more and more and more expensive. I'm not a big fan of the info wars. I believe in solving problems, and if you have an enemy, guess what? Kill them. All right? Just kill them. Iran is a perfect example. Kill the enemy. Instead of, well, we're going to have to talk and we're going to have to create an MOU and then maybe it will come to fruition and we'll have peace, and then it all collapses and we just waste more money. Just kill the enemy. We had a problem with slavery in the United States. We had a civil war. We solved that problem. The same thing here. We got problems with ultra-liberals. Maybe the conservatives and the ultra-liberals need to go to war. Now, whoever wins, wins, but I have a hard time believing that a conservative would lose on the battlefield.
I try to push back on that often because you have plenty of foreign-born people who are enemies of socialism, and you have plenty people who've lived here their whole life, or, can trace descent to the Mayflower, who become enamored with it, so it's not really like that. In terms of obviously, I disagree with aspects of American policy that have led to the destabilization of Latin America or overthrowing governments. I think the left sometimes does a sleight of hand that when they're, U.S. imperialism and capitalism did this to it. Well, U.S. imperialism, I guess I see why you would use that term, but this is getting rather maybe academic, but capitalism, I would push back when the left says it. Capitalism does not mandate you going to war and capitalists tend to not like when nations go to war because it's bad for business, right? The capitalists want you to
You go to, capitalism, the whole history of capitalism is that to secure material, certain inputs, certain markets, if you can't do it nicely, you do it through war. That's capitalism. But first you try to do it nicely. First you try to diplomatically open up markets and secure certain raw materials. But if that doesn't work, somehow, some way, war happens. That is part of the capitalist way. But it's tied into powerful entities that have influence on governments. For the same thing.
You know, buy bananas from the foreign place or whatever, or exchange of goods. Maybe sometimes they want a different regime because the regime in power, doesn't want to do any of that. But it's not really that they're trying to do. It's like mercantilism, like the economic philosophy that led to like the colonization of America is pre-capitalist. It's about enriching the coffers of the King of England and the King of Spain, like with gold. Like that's not really it's actually not a capitalist economy.
Well, I mean, it depends exactly how you define capitalism, but I think the counter argument would be that in some of those nations in Latin America, including Cuba, one of the issues that the respective United States governments had was the nationalization of industries or the thwarting of American corporate interests in those countries. I mean, taken out of the Latin American context, in Iran, Mossadegh, the prime minister of the 50s, was deposed in part because he wanted to nationalize the oil industry, right? So it was a capitalistic impulse of some kind.
Well, but right now the capitalist impulse is actually we want the capitalists want the sanctions lifted so you can do business with Iran. It's the pro-war side imposing sanctions and crushing military attacks that is doing a non-capitalist thing, right? Capitalism doesn't blowing things up doesn't make people. I mean, it quite literally makes one specific firm richer, the one that makes the bombs, but is not. It is not productive to blow things. You build a bridge, you lower the cost of transporting goods across the distance. You blow up a bridge, you don't accomplish that.
Right, exactly. Don't blow up.
Don't blow out either. All right, next up, Tucker Carlson with some harsh words for President Trump and the war in Iran as the U.S. continues to launch strikes on that country, as we've discussed. We'll be right back.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Bloomer Boost. Bloomer Boost has the vitamins and the minerals that you need to take every day to help slow down the aging process, but you also get a lot more in this supplement. And these extra supplements that you get will help with cardiovascular health, brain function, musculature, revving up your metabolism, controlling your A1C levels, soaking up free radicals, bringing down inflammation, boosting up your immune system and your endocrine system. Bloomer Boost is something that you should be taking every day, and it's a very powerful supplement. This can be your multivitamin. All right. C60, you can get it in avocado oil, extra virgin olive oil, and MCT coconut oil. You can get a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. It is cheaper to get the higher ounce configuration. It's cheaper per ounce. Now, C60 is about 1,000 times stronger than vitamin C. C60 will help to bring down inflammation, help to bring down stress in the cell and your tissues. Your organ systems will perform better, and the mitochondria in the cells will perform better. It's going to soak up free radicals, and you're going to have more energy. Now, when you're reducing that stress, reducing that inflammation, soaking up those free radicals, you're slowing down the aging process. You soak up free radicals at the vascular level. You're reducing the concentrations of oxidized LDL, so you're reducing plaque formation. By soaking up free radicals and bringing down stress and bringing down inflammation at the neuron level, the neurons are healthy. And when your neurons are healthier, you'll think better. You'll have better memory. You'll have better brain function. Your endocrine system and your immune system will perform better. You'll recover quicker after a workout. Take a teaspoon a day every day. I've been doing this for over 10 years, every day. It's a very powerful antioxidant. And a great stack is to take the C60 with the Bloomer Boost. Also, C60 helps the basal layer for your skin, so your skin's healthier. And you will notice that if you stack it with resveratrol, that's a powerful stack to help to improve your skin health. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the C60, get the Bloomer Boost. That's a great stack. But my core protocol is very simple. A probiotic, max 35, C60, turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans in the Boomer Boost. You do that every day, and you're doing wonders for your health. It's very simple. Let's go back to Bloomberg. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
In flux. They're also looking at what developments out of the Middle East. But right now, the S&P holding on to a gain. Chips are rallying. S&P higher by 32 right now, up about 0.4%. The Dow, however, as I mentioned, in the red right now, with the Dow Industrials down 112, a drop there of just about 0.2%. Nasdaq up 224 for the Nasdaq Composite Index. That is a gain of 0.9%. Down day as well for the Russell 2000 Index of small cap shares, lower now by 0.1%. All of this for the stocks. The Philadelphia Stock Exchange Semiconductor Index rebounding up 2.6% right now. The VIX below 18 and the 10-year at 4.58%. Gold flat on the day, 4,016 the ounce, while West Texas Intermediate crude bouncing around, now lower by 0.7%, 81.91 a barrel. Brent, 87.76, down now by 0.4%. Bottom line, though, Wall Street very much focused on the latest headlines out of the Middle East. Iran says mediators have been in touch with proposals on how to ease hostilities with the U.S. after several days of clashes. Stephen Cook is senior fellow for Middle East and Africa Studies at the Council on Foreign Relations. He was a guest this morning on Bloomberg Surveillance.
While the United States and Iran are firing at each other, third parties are trying to put together some sort of diplomatic agreement. At the moment, it doesn't seem as if the president is truly interested in a negotiation. He wants to make a point after these 3 or 4 American service people were killed. But he is always open to negotiation, regardless of what he says.
Stephen Cook of the Council on Foreign Relations. Chip stocks higher, as I mentioned, NVIDIA up 1.7%, Broadcom up by 3.4%, Micron up by 5.6%, Intel, which reports this week, up by 4.2%. That, Joe Matthew, is a Bloomberg Business.
Looks like Iranian officials speaking right now on Al Jazeera.
Mediators are working and trying to de-escalate tensions. At the same time, we are doing everything we can to stop the U.S. from their criminal acts. There have been some offers. We have received messages through mediators. I'm not going to go into the details, but in recent days, diplomatic channels have been active, and ideas have been conveyed to us by certain mediators.
In a moment, we'll speak to Zain Ravi in Doha for the Gulf reaction, and our chief U.S. correspondent, Alan Fisher, for White House reaction to these developments. But first,
you're already listening to us. As we put the pieces back together in a president of the United States who's back home for the Meadowlands, did you see him on stage last night with Spain, the country he wanted to cut off all ties with? Seems they're getting back into his good graces after winning the World Cup, and we'll have more on that. As we begin with the situation in Iran, and breaking news from U.S. Central Command, just as Charlie was talking. CENTCOM says U.S. service members aboard amphibious assault ship USS Boxer support flight operations day and night from the Arabian Sea as CENTCOM enforces the naval blockade against Iran. As of July 20, here's the count. The U.S. military has redirected 7 commercial vessels and disabled 1 as the blockade, at least against Iran, stands. But we have a lot of news to pick through from the weekend because, as I mentioned, this was tough. There were a lot of headlines directing us to all-out war, with 3 Americans dead. The Kuwaiti military said it was responding to drone attacks from Iran after the president said Sunday night CENTCOM launched another wave of attacks. I think this was 9 days straight now. The president talked from the tarmac, actually, as he was making his way back from the World Cup. Listen to what he said.
We hit them very hard again tonight. This is a far bigger job that we're doing. We were doing a little job to stopping them from having a certain capability. Now we're just ending it. So it's really not the same thing. What we're doing now is we're ending any chance where they could have a nuclear missile.
So there you have the latest round. It ended about 10 o'clock last night, and we'll be curious to see what happens today with now reports of a potential diplomatic breakthrough. Reuters is suggesting there's a plan on the table or a proposal for a 10-day ceasefire. We'll see if that's real and if it goes anywhere. As we now realize, at least based on reporting from the New York Times, we'll talk to the Colonel about this, that with these missiles getting through to Jordan and Kuwait and other areas, it may be that Iran is finding its way to more effectively route around our air defenses. Let's bring them both in. They're both with us right now. Bloomberg Washington correspondent Tyler Kendall here in our Washington Bureau, and retired Army Colonel Wayne Sanders, Senior Defense Research Analyst at Bloomberg Intelligence. It's great to see you both, and thank you for starting the program with us here. Tyler, let's start with what we know. 3 Americans have died, which is something that we have to remind ourselves of, and I know that there could be a 4th based on remains that they are reviewing right now. What's the president said about this so far?
At this point, CENTCOM has confirmed those deaths, but said that they, quote, swiftly punished Iran with the wave of strikes that we saw over the weekend, that they say were also designed to degrade Iran's ability to threaten commercial shipping. It was a weekend that was marked by escalation. This, of course, incredibly significant as the total U.S. death toll related to the conflict in Iran has now reached 17, potentially 18 as we wait further updates. But it was also a weekend where both sides seemed to signal an openness to diplomacy, which was interesting. We heard from the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio saying that the U.S. received very strong signs that Iran wants to come to the negotiating table, but that the issue is the split among the hardliners that want to keep fighting and the more moderate members of the Iranian government that may be a little bit more open toward reaching a deal. But what we have to temper this with, amid the reporting that there seems to be maybe a proposal for a short-term ceasefire, Iran's foreign ministry put out a statement that I think really encapsulates the moment we're in. On one hand, they said there was diplomatic activity this weekend, but on the other, they said that they remain their sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz, which is the exact scenario that we're in.
Prompting the president to once again say we control the Strait. Colonel, we saw an exchange of attacks from both sides against civilian and military structures, desalination plants, energy targets, bridges. Does that put this conflict in a different phase in your eyes?
Yeah, I think it absolutely does. I think, we talked about it before in terms of both sides are trying to create a strategic level of center of gravity pressure on the other ones. So they can bring them to the table and then reach some type of agreement. After the ceasefire was in place for so long and now being able to come back, both sides right now are actually increasing not only the intensity of the strikes, but also where those targets are actually taking place. And so you see that with what Iran is doing against some of the Gulf partners beyond just going after the UAE, which was a favorite target prior to the ceasefire. And now, like you said, going after Jordan, going after U.S. military bases and targeting U.S. and not just some of the Gulf state partners that are supporting the U.S. So you're starting to see that. And then on the U.S. side of the house, you're starting to see where the targets have actually changed. And it's not just standard military targets that you're going after, but also some of the additional facilitation areas that you're looking at. Like you said, desalination plants are one of the ones we talked about before, as well as bridges and potentially even up to power plants.
The flurry of attacks, writes the New York Times, and losses they have caused are a sign that Iranian forces not only still have ample missile stocks, but have also become more adept at evading U.S. air defense systems. When you saw that video, those 2 missiles touching down in Jordan in the middle of the night, what did you think?
I think the biggest thing there that I took away from that was the U.S. had to be able to take a lot of their air defense capabilities and prioritize based off of where they thought the most likely areas of attacks were going to be.
Okay.
And so from that, I think that Iran did, take the U.S. a little bit by surprise in terms of where those were actually going to be. But now what you're going to see is that secondary side of that. Right now you're seeing the escalation piece of this. I really break this down into 3 different things. I bring it into power, partners, and pressure. Those are really the 3 biggest ones. Iran does still have power and capability, which they have been able to show. Now, how deep those stockpiles actually are is unknown, and that's a piece that I think CENTCOM and Fifth Fleet probably have a better understanding as to what they have. And then on the partner side of the house, you are seeing some Iran tied to the Houthi portion for their side of it. And then pressures what they're actually pushing on to Saudi Arabia, as well as everything that you're seeing inside the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. side, putting it on the same piece, is The U.S. is still ready to fight, and they still have the ability to swiftly, right after that took place, within hours, CENTCOM had already struck back against Iran, and they're going to continue to strike back. I think right before this, we heard one of the guests talking about the fact that there is an area in which, President Trump knows, he's like, he has to be able to answer swiftly for the deaths of Americans that have taken place from these Iranian attacks. So he's not going to just let go of this and be like, oh, okay, diplomacy is the first answer. But he also understands the long game in this, and so he's going to take that balance right now.
Amazing, Tyler, to see crude oil prices actually lower for the most part today, despite this news about Saudi Arabia, especially. That's kind of a new level for our conversation. But gas is rising, and it's back above $4 a gallon. If you're the president of the United States, the political calculation is unavoidable in a midterm cycle.
We often talk about $4 a gallon being that political threshold where the psychology around it for voters really starts to ramp up. I'm curious to see what sort of messaging we get from the administration recently when it came to gas prices. President Trump has previously accused big oil companies, saying that he wants investigations, even though we know that it often takes time for retail gasoline prices to change, in part because you have to trickle it through the supply chain, and that takes longer. Keep in mind, a lot of these are independent gas station owners who have to think about their own margins when they set the price that you and I pay at the pump. Just last week, we had confirmed that the administration was trying to think about steps for lowering prices in the general energy market, such as extending that Jones Act waiver. Curious to see if we get another debate about the federal gas tax.
I'm amazed that it went away, to be honest with you, but I guess a little relief in gas prices will do that now that it's back above $4. Just wait. Colonel, I'm looking at a story from AFP, Agence France. Iran fighting a full-scale war with the United States, as President said Monday. The declaration coming as its Yemeni allies, the Houthi rebels, threaten to expand the war further, as we discussed the blockade of Saudi Arabia. Will we continue to get language out of both sides of everyone's mouth? Full-scale war, open to diplomacy. This is what we're hearing from both countries.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you look at leverage as a national power, and you have your diplomatic side, you also have your information side. So they're going to get everything they possibly can out of that information perspective in this aspect. It allows them to be able to stretch out what they believe their power base is and actually say, okay, not only am I going after the 20% of oil passing through the Strait of Hormuz, but also the 12% coming off of the Red Sea as well.
You hopeful for a 10-day ceasefire?
I would be very hopeful, but
we'll see how
realistic
it is. Well, that's right. Absolutely. Colonel, thank you so much. We're glad to have you back in the Bureau. Colonel Wayne?
Please go to my store, blood-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Cleanse or the Max 35 or the Max 14. They're at different price points. But take a teaspoon a day every day. Swish in your mouth, gargle, about 20 seconds, and swallow it. What this will do is help to neutralize and improve your oral cavity and your oral pharynx, maintain a mucosal barrier, and help the health of your epithelial cells. This is going to help to boost up your innate immune system. This is very important to do every day, but especially during the cold season and the allergy season. So take a teaspoon a day every day. This is something that I've been doing for over 6 years every day. And it's part of this anti-aging protocol to help to boost up that innate immune system, improve that oral pharynx. And when you're doing that, you're reducing the chances of getting sick or you're reducing the chances of allergic reactions, due to allergens. And when you do that, you're slowing down the aging process. Why? Why is that? Well, if you get sick regularly, or if you have chronic allergic reactions because of allergens like pollen, it takes time for your body to heal. And during that healing process and that chronic inflammation, you're actually spending energy that your body could use somewhere else. So if you're chronically sick or have chronic allergic reactions, you're actually slowing down the aging process. I'm sorry, you're increasing the aging process. So if you're chronically sick, right? You're chronically sick, you have higher free radicals, higher inflammation, and you're speeding up the process of aging. You want to slow that down. How do you slow it down? Improve your innate immune system and reduce the times that you have these allergies. Reduce the number of times that you get the common cold. And when you do that, your body doesn't have that surge of inflammation, doesn't have that surge of free radical buildup, and your body can focus on other things. And that way you're slowing down the aging process. You look at someone that's chronically sick all the time, 3-4 times a year, they age faster. Compared to people that have a really good immune system, they usually look younger. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the cleanse and get the Max 35. Now, collagen. Collagen is really important to help with your skin, your nails, your hair, your musculature, your bone density, even your joint health. Super important. This also works really well with the vitamin C and magnesium, cross-link with the collagen if you drink filtered water. That filtered water is going to help with that cross-linking of the vitamin C and the collagen and help your dermal layer. Really important. And lastly, collagen. If you have a sports injury or arthritis and you want to help to heal that joint, collagen is going to help that. Now, what it does is it blocks inflammation by inhibiting EP4. It also helps to block the pain gatekeeper NAV 1.7. It also helps to reduce the erosion of the joint by blocking MMP3 and MMP13. And collagen helps to remodel the cartilage and remodel the cushioning of the joint. So take this every day if you have sports injury that's affected your joints, or you have some sort of arthritis. And whatever the joint is, but open up the joint, right, up to the point of pain, and count and go a little bit more, and then count to about 20 or 30 seconds, and then stop. Do that 3 times every day. And what you'll notice is that you'll be able to open up the joint more before you start getting pain. And as you're doing this, you'll eventually be able to open up the joint completely. And what you're doing is that doing this little exercise, you're sending microsignals to tell the body, fix this. All right? And you need some help fixing it. The collagen is going to help with remodeling that joint. Now, if you take the collagen together with the collagen, you're going to have the building blocks to help with building up that cartilage. So please go to my store, get the collagen, get the collagen. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
Today, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now wherever you get your podcast. I'm Charlie Howard. That Joe Matthew is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, great to see you, sir. The voice of Wall Street and the New York subway will be back in about 20 minutes' time with another read on the markets here. Strange to see crude oil lower. There's some things I'll never understand. As the Houthi rebels now threaten a blockade against Saudi Arabia and crude's lower. We're at war with Iran. Massive disconnect in the market on so many of these issues. As we had determined in our opening segment, though, gas prices just keep on rising. $4 a gallon now, national average, which is not the headline that the president was looking for. Big thanks, by the way, to Colonel Sanders. He's been out of the office for a minute. Great to get him back. And Tyler doing her thing on balance of power. It's a great program here on Bloomberg and indispensable at times like these to really bear down on what's happening in Washington, and in this case, on Capitol Hill. You might not believe what you're about to hear. We're down to 4 days. That's it. You've got 4 days to finish all of your work because August recess is looming. By the way, next hour, right around now, we'll be spending some time with Mike Flood, Republican congressman who's still celebrating the housing bill that the president decided not to sign. But the Rules Committee is going to get behind closed doors about 90 minutes from now. And that's usually when the fighting begins, right, in the House. 4 days remain. This is like the setup for a game show. Imagine The Amazing Race, House Edition. You've got 4 days. You've got to vote on the NDAA. You need to get a clean CR, a budget resolution to the Pentagon, a quasi-ban on stock trading, and you need to get home to have some town halls and run for re-election. This is why everyone's talking about a potential government shutdown. Maybe not Nathan Dean. I don't think he's got odds on that. We get together with Nathan every week at this time, every Monday. He is the senior U.S. policy analyst at Bloomberg Intelligence, the man that terminal users call for advice on what in the world is happening in Washington, because a lot of investment decisions are based on this wackiness. Maybe you're one of them. You ever call Nathan? We just bring him on the program here every Monday, and he's with us now. Nice to see you, sir. Welcome back as always. Summer recess is about to start. Instead of me picking through all of these items that I just mentioned, will they get anything done?
Well, one of those 4 items is going to get the wrath of President Trump if it doesn't move forward.
Okay.
It's not going to be the NDAA. It's not going to be the Clean CR. It's not going to be the votes on the other thing.
Yeah.
It's going to be getting through the reconciliation deal.
3.0.
3.0, because that's the one thing that President Trump has been saying for in regards to the Save America Act.
Yes.
Now, when it comes to the reconciliation deal, it's up to $95 billion. We've been explaining to our clients this morning that it just opens the instructions. This isn't a vote that says, look, now the House has passed this.
Right.
But it's $60 billion up to the Department of Defense for munitions tied to Iran. So think RTX, Northrop Grumman, those defense contractors that are tied to munitions. It's $11 billion worth of farm aid. Now, when it comes to farm aid in particular, look for a one-time boost to like CF Industries or Mosaic for planting and seed, not really heavy machinery here. Most of the farmers that get this aid, they're going to pay down debt. So a lot of this isn't even going to go to companies. But what we're telling our clients is we're at a 30% chance of reconciliation, because even though Speaker Johnson can get it through this week, there's a number of reasons why the Senate is going to have issues with it. The Senate ultimately is going to look at it and say, you know what, we're going to do whatever we want to do anyway. And that's not going to be until September.
Not till September. Okay, so to your point, just like that, on cue, pretty amazing, James. President Trump on Truth Social a short time ago. Thank you to our great speaker, Mike Johnson, the House Budget Chair, Jody Arrington. We've got a call into him, by the way. And the members of the House Budget Committee, who he lists, for launching an effort to get as much of the Save America Act as possible in a budget bill. That's the one we're talking about with Nathan. Along with aid to our incredible farmers, our funding for our military. We need voter ID identification, proof of citizenship, and hopefully no corrupt mail-in ballots. I'm asking all House Republicans to vote yes this week on the budget resolution, which is an important first step towards getting a budget bill. It's almost like he was just listening to you. Kind of amazing. House Republicans must unify, he says, and fight for the Save America Act. So he doesn't use the word because no one really knows what that is. This is the reconciliation plan. If you put Save America in there, what does the parliamentarians say next door in the Senate?
Well, there's 2 versions of Save America that you're talking about.
Yeah.
It is the Save America version that President Trump wants. That doesn't get through the Senate parliamentarian. No, Senate parliamentarians can look at it and say no. And then Majority Leader Senator John Thune's going to be, are you going to get rid of the Senate parliamentarians? And he's going to say no.
We tried that.
Yeah, we tried that. So that's the version that President Trump wants. But there's up to $10 billion in this instructions to incentivize states to implement Save America Act through grants. That potentially could get through, but that's not what President Trump wants. And so are you going to give red states more money to implement Save America Act when these states can do it on themselves already? But when you have blue states saying we're not going to implement Save America Act, that doesn't really help President Trump with his goals. So ultimately, whether or not whatever version gets through the House this week, if it gets through, it's probably going to be the one that President Trump likes.
Okay, sure.
With everybody knowing the Senate parliamentarians.
It's a wall in the Senate.
Yeah.
Gee whiz. All right, so this is a riot. I'm not even sure what to ask you about here, because he's talking around this a little bit. Launching an effort to get as much of the Save America Act as possible in a budget bill. So he's already climbing down here, is he not?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So he knows how this ends.
Look, I mean, there is nobody that I've talked to, or anybody, client or Washingtonian, who thinks that the Save America Act has a chance of passage this year. They're not getting rid of the filibuster.
Yeah.
They're not going to implement a talking filibuster. They're not even going to get rid of the Senate parliamentarians. So the only path I see here is this idea of paying out grants, which is a budgetary issue, potentially could fly with the Senate parliamentarian. So I think that's the best case scenario that President Trump's hoping for.
So let's look at some of these other things we talked about. NDAA doesn't pass this time?
So the NDAA, the NDAA from an investment point of view, the House one is somewhat irrelevant. The biggest issue, I mean, look, obviously if you're a defense contractor, you care about the spending.
Sure.
But it really comes down to the Senate version, because you need to know, A, what is the amount of money the Senate is going to appropriate? Is it the 1.15 trillion? And also Section 815 of the Senate version. This is the provision that says that if you're a contractor, whether you're Sodexo and you're offering food services, or Bank of America because you've got an ATM somewhere on an Army base, if you're a contractor with the Department of Defense, you need permission from the DoD to offer stock buybacks and dividends. And that is why the Chamber of Commerce and 39 other organizations sent a letter to the Senate saying, get that provision out of here. We don't like this.
I'm really glad you mentioned this. We talked about it a little bit last week, but I didn't realize this has been framed as no buybacks for defense contractors, right? When you hear Elizabeth Warren say, you can't be out there enriching yourself in the stock market or enriching your shareholders. You need to use the money from the contract to make the best product you can. That's different than Bank of America's got an ATM on your base or Sodexo's doing the catering. Or do we know that those companies will be involved?
I'm sure right now there is a staffer over in the House or in the Senate who's listening to us right now saying that's not how this was supposed to be written up.
But it is.
But based off of my interpretation of that language, that's how it's written up.
Are you getting phone calls about this?
Not yet. I mean,
this is a big story for the Bloomberg audience.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's one of those things where, they call it drafting errors. You read this stuff. Is this truly a drafting error?
You can drive a truck through it.
I'm not exactly sure. And so, we'll see how this plays out. But the thing that we are telling our clients on this, and we did have a call about it this morning, is the one thing is we got time.
Yeah.
Because even though the fireworks right now is on the House side,
yes.
Senate side is not addressing this right now. Senate still has couple more, they still have some time before they go on the August recess, so we'll see what happens there. But ultimately, when it comes to all these bills, they got to get it done by the September 30th. And if not, what do? They kick the can.
And that's still your expectation over a shutdown.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the shutdown, the Democrats had a little bit of an issue with the shutdown earlier this year when they rejected the clean CR, but they didn't pay a political price. And so I think from the Democratic perspective, what I'm looking for as we go into September is, what is the issue that the Democrats can hang their hooks on to try and get to better themselves in the midterm elections? If an issue pops up where a shutdown will actually better themselves into the election, then I think you have a shutdown. But absent anything else, just a clean CR, I think they kick the can.
Wow, it's really something. The buyback issue is fascinating to me, and I'm guessing that this will need to, because it's not new. The president's talked about this before. The fact that it's actually being codified in the law now, I guess, is raising some questions. After this, everybody goes home to raise money and run for re-election, right? I mean, you've got the government funding issue to manage. They'll solve that in your view through CR. Stores closed otherwise? Is that
Well, the one thing,
Clarity Act?
That's it. It's that's the one thing that I'm putting myself out there. I'm saying I'm out of consensus on this. So if you go to Calstream, you go to Polymarket, the event contract's saying 38 to 32% chance of passage this year. I still think there is a chance they can get this done. Because if I'm a crypto platform like Coinbase, I want to deal now. I don't want to deal in 2 years when the Democrats potentially control the House of Representatives. If I'm a bank, I want to deal now, because if I don't get a deal, then the crypto platforms can do essentially work under a very friendly regulatory environment for the next 2 years. And if I'm a lawmaker, even one of those moderate Democrat lawmakers, I want to deal now, because the Crypto Political Action Committee money is a serious thing. And whether they're going to help me or hurt me or combat me or support me. So, if the deal does come together, it'll come together quick. But if not, I don't think you get a deal until after the Trump administration.
So that would be this week or next, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
That would be a big deal, Nathan. That, I guess, is why you're saying you're out of consensus.
Yeah.
Is it the ethics language or the stablecoin deal that's holding this up right now?
It's not the stablecoin. It's the ethics language, and it's language bringing crypto up to traditional finance in terms of Bank Secrecy Act and a money laundering.
Okay.
Now, there was a story about President Trump's family involvement with crypto. That did not help. And for what it's worth,
the financial disclosures didn't either.
No, exactly. And so what happened here is I think the Democrats said, look, we're going to take that issue and we're going to push for more language here. Senator Warner said over the weekend that the language just isn't there yet. They're not negotiating. So ultimately what happens here is Senator Thune will have to make a decision. Am I going to hold a vote or yes or no? And if I hold a vote and put the Democrats on record, that's a really tough thing for them to face.
Wow. Boy, this is going to be a heck of a couple of weeks here. And boy,
please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the structural nano silver gels. You can get it in Renew, which is a quick dispenser, or you can get just the regular tube version. Either one, it's dual purpose. It'll help to heal a cut, an abrasion, or a minor burn quicker, about 1/3 of the time. You can use it as a daily skincare, and you can put it on your hands and lightly coat your nostrils. It will stay active for 5.5 hours, perfect for the allergy season, the cold season, and also this issue that we have with the Canadian fires. You want to lightly coat your nostrils and block some of that particulate matter. And structural nanosilver toothpaste. This will whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, bring down inflammation, help the health of your gum line, neutralize because it has structural nanosilver, has no fluoride in it. And by improving your oral cavity, you're also helping your cardiovascular health. A lot of people don't realize that poor oral hygiene can cause problems with your cardiovascular system. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get a few tubes of this toothpaste. It's very high quality. You should use it every day, especially during the cold season. And it has the structural nanosilver, so it's going to help to neutralize. It's better than the other toothpaste that you have out there. That's the end of my broadcast. Just a quick market update here. The S&P 500 is trading at 7,485. I still have a year-end target of 7,800. We might get 7,000. We may get an 8,000 mark, but I'm kind of taking that off as a low probability event. So right now, 7,800 is my year-end target. I am concerned about the AI bubble, and pay attention to the semiconductor industry and the tech industry. Now, there are a lot of ways that you can gauge it. I'm really focused on the semiconductor industry. I did a short using the ETF SSG, made a little bit of money on it, just kind of tipping my toe into the water here. But if we see a decent drawdown on the S&P 500 tomorrow or the next day or Wednesday, you should most likely see the SSG ETF go up. Because I suspect that when we start to have that drawdown on the S&P 500, there'll be other reasons for investors to shed the tech stocks and the semiconductor stocks. Thank you for listening. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the great products that I offer. These are supplements that I take every day to help slow down the aging process. And make sure you use discount 5 so you can save some money. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.